Chapter 43, Blood and Death. Kill, 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 till the blood flowed like a stream, till the sky became murky over the bloody earth. How many times had he died? 100 times, or far more. Yunshi had forgotten. Quicksilver motion, starting, zagging and brandishing his sword. Kai. The sword blade cut through the first stone soldier's heart. Its blood sprayed in the air and stained Yunshi's cloth armor. The 13th. Flying swallow sixfold attacks. Continuous quicksilver motioning and zagging. It was not the common flying swallow triple attacks, but repeating the first move of the flying swallow attack for 6 times, bursting out the fastest and smoothest attack 6 times within the shortest time. 1, 2, 3. As the flying swallow hovered in the air, the stone soldiers it targeted fell down one by one, and out flew their green souls. Ha! With a stunning roaring, Yunshi had used his strength. But it was too early to change his posture, as a big and tall person jumped down from a high position and cracked Yunshi's head by using a big stone, tablet-like sword. Yunshi's blood winded through the ground. He also kept this guy in his mind. Boom! Under Yunshi's feet, the giant weapon struck the ground into debris. Yunshi slipped through the weapon's bombardment and the coordinated attacks of the stone soldiers. He diverted the 4 swords from locking onto his heart by lifting his shield up and was going to strike back, when he suddenly felt the back of his head go cold. Out of his sight, from the high above in the sky, where it obviously was beyond the reach of a human, a pair of glassy swords flew and hovered in the sky, with Yunshi's blood dripping from its blade. It was that guy. At that moment where Yunshi's head fell to the ground, he saw that inconspicuous but hateful enemy. Din, din, din. With a stream of tinkling sounds of weapons, Yunshi skillfully moved the shield in his hands and blocked all the frontal attacks. Afterward, he made a backflip and dodged the whirling twin swords that dropped down from the sky. Flying swallow sixfold attack. By using the collision size of the stone soldiers as his shield, Yunshi played his ace, the new learned deadly skill. 1, 2, 3, 3 stone soldiers' heads were cut off and flew to the sky. At the next second, a weird and long sword shadow flashed in the crowd. Yunshi felt his body go cold and his heart stop. Then, only blood red remained in front of his eyes. Again. It was that person. Out of the corner of Yunshi's eyes, Yunshi forced himself to look at that place, making out that person's unmatched and ethereal figure among these stone soldiers. Bang! 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 Yunshi's heartbeats made a whooshing sound that echoed in the empty frontage square of the palace. He had died 135 times. The main reason, death under siege. His head was cut off dozens of times, his body was torn to pieces dozens of times, he was trampled to death dozens of times due to loss of balance, and he was hacked dozens of times after falling to the ground due to taking an arrow to the knee. In the past, Yunshi thought that fighting desperately with the green hippo for 120 times was already the most violent massacre in the world. Now, he knew that he made a grave mistake. He just stepped in the battlefield of his first formal trial and didn't even get through the first level. However, he had already tasted death 3 times more than during the newbie trial. Come on, there are only you 3 left. Standing in the middle of a large number of broken arms and wreckage and stepping on the stone soldier's corpse, Yunshi held his shield and provoked the last 3 high-level stone soldiers, who were rushing out from the first palace. Yes, the shield. After killing enemies one after another by using quicksilver motion and flying swallow sword, his killing record stopped at 17. Finally, Yunshi remembered that beside the campfire, there was a shield. Reality taught him that the 3 pieces of equipment the stars prepared for him in the trial were all indispensable. The newbie iron sword wouldn't wear and tear, so he didn't need to worry about if it would be curved in the killing. The cloth armor didn't have high defense, but it really could reduce deadly injuries and offer him the little necessary defense. The last one was the shield. Just like the newbie iron sword, the shield also wouldn't wear and tear. In the most critical moment, it could save Yunshi's life. Without the shield, Yunshi wouldn't have been able to kill the 27 stone soldiers. He finally got the opportunity to fight against the last 3 high-level stone soldiers. At least till now, this was his best achievement, and was also the most difficult challenge in the first level. Yunshi clearly remembered that he had been killed by the 3 high-level stone soldiers at least 200 times. In order to distinguish the 3 high-level soldiers from other common soldiers, Yunshi marked the 3 people as Stone Soldier number 1, number 2, and number 3. Stone Soldier number 1's strength was near the upper level of the 2nd rank. He was good at using 2 swords and had high speed. His special attack skill was whirling 2 swords. He could throw out the 2 swords and have them return to his hands by themselves. Yunshi had never seen such a sword skill. Stone Soldier number 2 was also at the upper level of the 2nd rank. He was mighty and adept at using the heavy sword. His special attack skill was leaping attack. His skill was simple and a little like the Green Hippo's straight-line attack, but the difference was that he often chose to attack Yunshi when he was in a hit-back motion. His deadly leaping attack often made Yunshi face death directly. Stone Soldier number 3 was at the mid-level of the 2nd rank. He was good at using the snake-bone soft sword, which was a pretty rare weapon. His special attack was Spirit Snake's chaotic dancing. He was undoubtedly the weakest one among the 3 high-level stone soldiers. However, most of the time, it was him that killed Yunshi because he was the only one who didn't fear Yunshi's flying swallow sword. Arguably, it was his Spirit Snake sword skill that made Yunshi learn how to use the shield. Apart from this, Yunshi had found the method to kill the other 27 stone soldiers one by one. In the end, there were only the 3 strongest high-level stone soldiers that Yunshi had to deal with, who were so thorny and had completely different properties. The tallest enemy, Stone Soldier number 2, mumbled a few words and stood up first. Compared to Yunshi, who was covered in bumps and bruises and was too horrible to look at, this burly guy was not harmed at all and was in his best state. The other 2 people were also in the same state. They had also experienced those sanguinary battles, but the 3 people could keep themselves in their best state and weren't killed by Yunshi even once. This had proved their strength. They were at a high level, above the 27 deceased stone soldiers. Though they were called the childs of noble families just like all the other people, they were true elites. The geniuses like Ashen, who had felt complacent just because of their little gifts, were not at the same level with them at all. They didn't use all their strength. They just coldly looked at Yunshi killing the stone soldiers and had no worries, because they were far weaker than them. The reason was simple: they all had the strength to kill Yunshi one-on-one. They mastered their family's inheritance. Even if Yunshi learned how to use Quicksilver Motion and Flying Swallow Sword, he couldn't fight against them. For them, Yunshi was just a toy they used to enjoy the feeling of killing. Chapter 44, Yunshi's Outbreak. Things became interesting. Stone Soldier number 2 carried his big sword, carelessly walking toward Yunshi. Compared to Yunshi, who was covered in bumps and bruises while holding a sword in one hand and a shield in the other, Stone Soldier number 2 was in a much better state. Most of the time Yunshi was killed by the 3 stone soldiers. They were the biggest factor that caused Yunshi's deaths. In regards to the boys and girls of noble families who were at the 1st rank or just entered the 2nd rank in the common army, they were super elites. Every one of them was able to threaten Yunshi's life alone. In principle, Yunshi had Hua's seed. He shouldn't be driven to the last ditch by them. If it were a fair battle, the winning percentage of Yunshi against any of them would be more than 90%. Unfortunately, fairness wasn't a thing that existed in the world. Yunshi already knew it when he faced the star trials the first time. If it was about talent or combat intuition, after obtaining Hua's seed, he also obtained a huge advantage. However, they had a greater advantage than him. The biggest reason that caused his death every time: equipment. Yes. The reason why Yunshi was killed by the 3 people was because their equipment were way better than his. Stone Soldier number 1 had a pair of whirling swords. Stone Soldier number 2 had a big sword. Stone Soldier number 3 had a snake bone soft sword. They were all weapons of the best quality, which were made by using special methods, and even had a few special abilities. Mortals couldn't use hero rank weapons, so their weapons still weren't beyond the limit of the mortal rank. However, they were still 3 masterpieces of skilled craftsmen. It seemed that the whirling twin swords Stone Soldier number 1 owned had a special magnetism. No matter where he threw it to, it would eventually fly back to its owner. The big sword stone soldier number 2 owned weighed up to over 100 kilograms. It was a heavy weapon that was only fit for people who were born with superhuman strength. The snake bones soft sword stone soldier number 3 owned was the most terrible and fatal evil sword among the 3 weapons. It even possessed a few abilities that normally only hero rank weapons had. At the very moment he brandished his sword, it could cheat its enemy's sight and spatial sense. But as for Yun Shi, he had only a newbie sword, a newbie cloth armor, and a newbie wooden shield. The 3 people all had swords that fitted them the most. They had experienced the best education since their childhoods, and their power also were all better than Yun Shi's. Yun Shi could only defeat them by using his talent and his 3rd rank combat intuition. Unfortunately, at the mortal rank, weapons and equipments were more important than Yun Shi's imagination. This was the impassable wide gap among ordinary people and childs. It was the largest factor that couldn't be surpassed by talent. At the mortal rank, children of noble families had craftsmen specially making weapons for them, plus they could learn their family's sword skills. Compared to common swordsmen who were at the same rank as them, they had overwhelming advantages. Yun Shi didn't know where the 3 top-level stone soldiers were from and who they were, but after experiencing battles again and again, he had clearly touched the limit that common swordsmen could reach. Weapons were really important. The first time, Yun Shi began to think more seriously about this point. What common swordmen lacked most. You can't kill the dragon without good weapons and equipment. This was a proverb from the Western god's domain. It implicitly told young boys who wanted to become strong that they shouldn't ignore the importance of equipment even if they were super geniuses. Good equipment could play an extremely important role in battle. Those childs who had received the best education knew it clearer than anyone. In that case, even though Yun Shi had killed 27 stone soldiers, in the eyes of the 3 top-level stone soldiers, he was still just SOSO. Yun Shi threw away his shield, though it had protected him countless times during the battle, and held his sword with one hand. I know it. You have better weapons than me, and received a better education than me. You were born with everything. Perhaps this is just a game in your eyes. A game of chicken. A game that was named as slaughter. But I tell you, you are wrong. You know nothing about true talent. Your biggest mistake was just sitting by and watching me kill the 27 stone soldiers who could originally help you. One fighting against 30 and one fighting against 3 are 2 totally different situations. Using Quicksilver motion, giving up defense and using the skill of Flying Swallow Sword to its limit. The first attack of the Hovering Swallow. Hee-ha. Stone Soldier 2 tensed his muscles. He held his heavy sword and made a whirlwind slash. Stone Soldier number 1 threw out his whirling twin swords from his hands. The twin swords dropped from the sky from a weird angle. Buzz. The snake bones soft sword suddenly quivered in the hands of Stone Soldier number 3. It was like a viper that darted out from the grass, biting at the hovering swallow. In their eyes, Yun Shi's Flying Swallow Sword was the only move they thought that could threaten them. However, after observing him for so long, they had found the weakness of the Flying Swallow. The viper's bite that Stone Soldier number 3 understood was faster than the Flying Swallow. Who told you that I can only use the Flying Swallow Sword? The first attack of Flying Swallow was not completed, because Yun Shi proactively broke it. You were my first target. 9 cold sword lights flashed. It was way more swift, violent, and deadly than the snakebone's soft sword. Attack the weakest one. Though Stone Soldier number 3 had the weirdest sword skill and the fastest speed among all the 3 top-level stone soldiers, but he was still at the 2nd rank. He was the weakest one among all the 3 people. In order to pursue speed, he must weaken his defense. From the beginning, Yun Shi was aiming at Stone Soldier number 3, because his threat was the biggest and his weakness was also very conspicuous. Kai. With the noise of wind and the noise of blood dropped down, before the smile disappeared from the corner of Stone Soldier number 3's mouth, his body had been cut into 2 by Yun Shi. As a price, one of Yun Shi's hands was chopped down by the whirling sword from the side. Even if I have only one hand, you still can't beat me down. Why had Yun Shi left them to the end? Not only because they were the strongest, but also because they were the most stupid. They knew nothing about true talent. The sword was dancing. This time, Yunshi finally used the complete Flying Swallow triple attack. Stone Soldier number 2 looked very shocked. He put the heavy sword in front of himself, trying to block Yunshi's critical slash. You can't block my attack. The first attack chopped on the left part of the heavy sword. The second attack chopped on the right part of the heavy sword. The last attack was as elegant as the Flying Swallow, chopping down Stone Soldier number 2's head. Your greatest weakness was that you don't know the horror between life and death. After going beyond the limit of oneself, humans could have an outbreak of incredible potential that is even greater and beyond their own imagination. Chapter 45. Kill. How is this possible? As the only Stone Soldier left standing, Stone Soldier number 1 looked incredulously at Yunshi, who had lost one of his arms and was stained with blood. He remembered that 3 seconds ago, they still had an overwhelming advantage because the human body had its limit. After killing 27 Stone Soldiers, though there were just some trash fish or cannon fodders in their eyes, he should already be very tired. After seeing the brat's miserable appearance, the 3 people played the hunter game with ease, preparing to slaughter this unenlightened kid with the most terrible method. Your biggest arrogant mistake was to give up your numerical superiority. Yunshi panted. Though he had lost one of his arms, his eyes were still bright. The biggest difference between the first star trial and the newbie trial was that the number of his enemies grew by leaps. 1 versus 1, with Huahua's seed, as a first-ranked warrior, Yunshi could even kill third-rank monsters like the fierce green hippo. 1 versus 30, though Yunshi already reached the second rank, he had already been killed 300 times by the Stone Soldiers, who were also at the second rank. By using the bloody reality, the stars were teaching Yunshi what the true battlefield was like. Here, no one would have a one-on-one fight with you. If you had to face over 30 enemies, flesh and blood could do nothing. Maybe when Huahua was still at the second rank, she could kill the 30 people by herself with ease, but that didn't mean Yunshi could do the same. He wasn't Huahua. Even though his combat awareness had reached the third rank, his body didn't. He needed to adjust his body, and try again and again, suffering attacks by using his own flesh and blood, in order to figure out what the weapons were, the battle skills, and attack habits of the 30 Stone Soldiers. Every death made Yunshi have a deeper understanding about the bloody battlefield. If the limit practice in the valley opened the door of the warrior for Yunshi, then you could say that the formal trial led Yunshi to finally step on the road behind the door. After dying for 315 times, Yunshi finally found the way to success. By using the 3 top-level Stone Soldiers' arrogance, he killed the other 27 ordinary Stone Soldiers. As the higher-level Stone Soldiers, they owned special legacies. Their biggest shortcoming was their disdain for those ordinary Stone Soldiers. They could never imagine that without the 27 ordinary Stone Soldiers, and with only themselves to fight with Yunshi, what a terrifying strength he could burst out with. Damn it, as his 2 hands held the whirling sword, streams of sweat dropped from Stone Soldier number 1's forehead. Why has this dream suddenly changed? He still remembered that just now, it was still a game to let them slaughter the stupid and overconfident newbie. However, in an instant, the newbie became a terrifying monster. He'd killed 2 of the strongest 3 people. No. I'm the strongest. They are just my sidekicks. As a top-level elite of a noble family, he wouldn't concede defeat. You are scared. Yunshi took a deep breath. Me? No. Stone Soldier number 1 held his twin swords. You beastie kid, you think your talent is enough to support your arrogance. You don't understand how many times we are better than you. I will let you witness my true power. You've lost one of your arms. In that case, do you still think that you can match up to me? His twin swords danced in the air. It was a sword skill Yunshi had never seen. In a flash, he lost the twin swords from his sight. It was no wonder that he was an elite of a noble family. Yunshi didn't look down on his opponent's strongest attack. Quicksilver motion. Flying Swallow triple attack. There you go. It's just Flying Swallow attack. Stone Soldier number 1 had realized what Yunshi's sword skill was. Flying Swallow attack was famous for its dexterity and elegance. It needed its practitioners to have a high flexibility and manual dexterity, a secret sword skill that could only be learned by people who had extraordinary talent. In the air, This sword skill was created by a real swordmaster. When he used this skill, he could cut off space. Besides, it was the key leading to more advanced sword skills. However, most of the people who were able to master this secret sword skill were girl geniuses who were 13 or 14 years old. Very few mortal males had the physical flexibility and manual dexterity to learn this sword skill. As time passed, the flying swallow sword nearly became a special sword skill that could only be learned by females. The whirling twin swords became two crane wing-like light balls. They flew from the left and right, crashing into each other with Yuan-Shi's flying swallow triple attack. The first attack, his flying swallow, was bounced back by the whirling sword on the left. The second attack, his flying swallow, was bounced back by the whirling sword on the right. His last attack, the secret assassin attack, was also blocked by the crossed two swords. In the next moment, two swords cut through Yuan-Shi's body together, giving him a deadly attack. How awesome was it? It wasn't inferior to the flying swallow sword at all. Yuan-Shi felt like he was blind as a bat, which meant that his physical strength and mental strength both reached its limits. Just now, he killed Stone Soldier number 2 and number 3, he needed to pay for it. Especially the 9 sword lights he used to kill the Stone Soldier who had the Snakebone's soft sword. It was the first time that Yuan-Shi used them. He couldn't control them perfectly yet. However, he hadn't failed yet. He didn't think that he had to fear anything. Since he didn't fall down, it meant that the fight hadn't ended yet. You child of a noble family. Bang! Though Yuan-Shi's body was cut through by the two swords, he didn't hesitate to knock his body on the Stone Soldier number 1's body, and the next was his fierce headbutt attack. With a piercing scream, Stone Soldier number 1, who thought he had achieved victory, toppled to the ground. A bloodstain appeared on his forehead. I say, you childs who grew up in a greenhouse, you underestimate the battlefield too much. Before I was able to do this, I had been killed by you 315 times. Yuan-Shi ground his teeth, drawing the sword out of his own body and brandishing it towards him. The last Stone Soldier's head flew to the sky. A great deal of blood splurted out of his neck, staining Yuan-Shi's body, making him dirtier. However, he was the winner. Compared to the battle between him and the Green Hippo, the battle this time was more brutal, desperate, and cruel. However, by relying on the sword talent Hua's seed brought him, and his will of never giving up and collapsing, Yuan-Shi finally passed the first stage. In front of the first palace, an enormous number of green souls flew around on the battlefield, as Yuan-Shi then absorbed them one by one. By absorbing them, Yuan-Shi's wounds and awful scars all recovered bit by bit. The warm campfire lit up Yuan-Shi's gritty face. The bloody sword blade was reflected in his eyes. Finally, he took his first step in the trial of blood and fire. The next step is to check my spoils. Chapter 46. Forging. Sure enough, the formal trial was unlike the newbie trial. Though it was difficult, in the first level of the trial, the first group of stone soldiers had killed Yuan-Shi 300 times, but Yuan-Shi had also obtained equal rewards from them. Yuan-Shi only obtained the hippo's soul from the green hippo. However, besides the stone soldiers' souls, the stone soldier army Yuan-Shi killed also provided him 4 spoils. 3 of the spoils made Yuan-Shi feel the importance of weapons and the equipment Yuan-Shi obtained in the formal trial. The 2 cranes swords, they were 2 famous swords owned by the second child of the Yunhe family, and forged by the 17th successor of god craftsman Oyu Yezi. They were 2 swords specially made for supporting the Yunhe sword skill. They had the property that could be thrown out to attack enemies by itself and then fly back to its master. The Yunhe sword skill, Yuan-Shi couldn't stop himself from remembering the several people who were living in the highest bamboo houses in the small town. Child Yunhe was one of them. The next was the 2-handed sword that the number 2 stone soldier used. It was a standard 2-handed sword of the Thunder Army in the Western God's domains, the walking sword of Child Xinyan, and was made by the Western God Artisans Guild. It was 108 kilograms, and only a person with superhuman strength could use it. It could even be used as a siege weapon. The last one was the weirdest sword, which brought Yuan-Shi the biggest trouble. Snakebone's soft sword. It was the heritage spirit weapon of the White Lotus Sword Domain's Snakebone's family. It was held by the current child Snakebones, and no one knew who its maker was. People only knew that it was probably forged from some hero-rank spirit snake's remnant parts. It was specially made for supporting the snake-bones sword skill. After reaching the hero rank, its user could summon the shadow of the spirit snake out of the sword to fight for him. Spirit weapon. It was the first spirit weapon Yunshi obtained. Mortals couldn't display the true power of weapons at this level. They could only use them as the best mortal rank weapons. No wonder Child Snakebones' attacks were so weird. The Snakebones soft sword was a true spirit weapon. It was a great waste to be used by a mortal. But I can't use them at all. Looking at the spoils he obtained in his first formal trial, Yunshi was a little annoyed. No matter if it was the two cranes swords or Snakebones soft sword, they were all specially made for supporting sword skills. Especially the Snakebones soft sword, it needed a special bloodline to match with it. In that case, Yunshi couldn't even use it. Now, Yunshi could only use the standard two-handed sword of the Thunder Army from the Western God's domain. However, Yunshi's power was from Huahua's seed. His strongest sword skill was the lightweight and flexible flying swallow sword. It wasn't something that matched with the super giant sword which weighed 108 kilograms. Yunshi twisted the corner of his mouth slightly after he imagined his slender Huahua waving the two-handed giant sword to attack someone. No, he couldn't use them. After picking and choosing, Yunshi found that now, the newbie iron sword was still the optimal choice for him. Fortunately, the fourth spoil gave Yunshi a hint that even though these weapons didn't fit him, they could still offer him their power. The last spoils were 10 small crystals that emitted teeny green lights. These fragments of green crystals were the essence of weapon enhancement. They could be used to forge and enhance low-level weapons. The fragments could be obtained after randomly defeating enemies or by disassembling low-level weapons. Disassemble them. Yunshi decided to disassemble the Snakebones soft sword and the flying two crane swords, leaving only the two-handed giant sword, because he thought that maybe he could use it. The method to disassembling weapons was simple. He had only to throw the weapon he couldn't use into the campfire. Ding! After a while, dozens of the fragments of green crystals flew out from the campfire and fell into Yunshi's hands. Well, the two crane swords gave me 4 fragments. The Snakebones soft sword is worthy of being called a spirit weapon. It gave me 31 fragment. After counting out all the fragments of green crystals he had, Yunshi moved his eyes to the 4 pieces of equipment in his armory. The newbie iron sword, the newbie cloth armor, the newbie wooden shield, and the standard two-handed sword of the Thunder Army from the Western God's domain. At first glance, it would be best to use all the fragments of green crystals to forge and enhance the last spoil, because it could improve his combat capabilities immediately. The problem was that the strongest choice was not always the optimal choice. After hesitating for a while, Yunshi chose the newbie iron sword because it was the most suitable one for him. Up to now, he had the highest proficiency with the newbie iron sword among all the weapons he had used. He decided to change for a better sword after obtaining more spoils after the trial. As for the uncommon standard two-handed sword of the Thunder Army, maybe he could learn how to use it in the future. Enhance the newbie iron sword. After putting the newbie iron sword in front of the campfire, Yunshi sent out the enhancing order. 3 green crystals immediately turned into ashes and began to enhance the newbie iron sword for the first time. The green light points infiltrated the newbie iron sword and engraved new grooves on the common newbie iron sword. Every groove would use 3 green crystals. After using up 9 green crystals, the newbie iron sword had 3 beautiful ancient-style grooves on it, which made it look better. However, the green crystals gave no response at all after that. Could it only be enhanced 3 times? Yunshi knew that this was the newbie iron sword's limit. It was limited by its material quality, and couldn't be engraved with any more grooves in it. To be honest, even the 3 grooves had surprised Yunshi. He didn't know how it was made. It was a superlative craftsmanship. After enhancing 3 times, it didn't change anything, no matter its center of gravity or quality of balance. However, its material quality and sharpness had been improved to a higher level. Perhaps the newbie iron sword couldn't compare to the two-handed sword of Thunder Army now, but it was already a fine sword. It could at least be regarded as a top-grade weapon among all mortal weapons. Especially, when it had the special property Never Wear, which was the only property of the newbie weapon. Well, then, it's your turn now. After successfully enhancing the newbie iron sword, Yunshi enhanced the newbie cloth armor and the newbie wooden shield to their limit without hesitation. As the same as the newbie iron sword, the enhancing limit of the newbie cloth armor and the newbie wooden shield was 3 times. However, the cloth armor needed 3 times more green crystals than the iron sword, which meant that it used 9 fragments of green crystals to engrave a single groove. After that, Yunshi had used all the fragments of green crystals he obtained in the first level. However, the expensive enhancement brought Yunshi power. After putting the 3 pieces of newbie equipment on his body, Yunshi could clearly feel the power the pieces of equipment brought him. Chapter 47, Lancers. The first was the newbie iron sword. The iron sword was the weapon Yunshi was most comfortable with. And now it was brand new, shining cold light from its sword handle to the point of the blade. Undoubtedly, its weight and center didn't change, but it was more comfortable and flexible to hold it in his hands. If there was a specific way to describe it, the newbie sword has enhanced Yunshi's combat power by over 150%. The next was the newbie cloth armor. After engraving 3 grooves on it, it supported Yunshi by defending his vulnerable body parts better. At least, he wouldn't be cut so easily again. As for the last one, the newbie wooden shield, it improved in stability and anti-impactability, which also meant that Yunshi needed to master higher skills to use it. After experiencing violent battles, wandering between death and life, Yunshi was keenly aware of the importance of good weapons and equipment on the battlefield. If he had these 3 pieces of equipment at that time, perhaps he would only to die 100 times and would pass through the first test perfectly. This was also the reason as to why he enhanced all his equipment without any hesitation after getting the fragments of green crystal. Because of the horror of death, it made him feel the value of life more clearly. Humans shouldn't get used to death. Yunshi didn't become numb to the frequent deaths, but only valued his own life more carefully. He knew that people died if they were killed. In the real world, there was no bonfire that could revive him without limit. My strength improved by about 10%. At the end of the first stage of the trial, Yunshi absorbed all the souls of the stone soldier army. The souls of every single stone soldier only offered Yunshi a few improvements. Even after he had absorbed the last 3 stone soldiers' souls, they couldn't match up with the green hippo's soul at all. The energy in the souls of the stone soldier army was more than the energy of the green hippo's soul, about 1.5 times, but to kill them was far more difficult than to kill the green hippo. Yunshi even missed the stupid green hippo a little from the newbie trial. The green hippo's soul let Yunshi become a first-rank swordsman, and the green hippo's seed let Yunshi level up to 2nd rank after his limit practice. Well, though the hippo was supposed to be killed, but it would be regarded as a pretty good novice package. It would be better if Ashen summoned more hippos at that time. The next step is to choose the route. Standing in the empty palace, Yunshi looked at the doors leading to 2 different areas. Behind the 2 doors, there were wide bridges, and both bridges had several stone soldiers wandering on them. The door on the left led to the volcanic area, where gathered countless flames. It was the location of the young heroine, who was going to fight the evil dragon. The door on the right led to the great tower. At the end of the coastline waited the imprisoned princess. Now, Yunshi had to make his choice. Should he do the branch quest first, meeting with his childhood sweetheart and fighting against the evil dragon in the volcanic area with her, or directly finish the main quest, going to the great tower to save the princess of the twin witches? By the way, do they really need my help? Yunshi stood in the middle of the fork with a helpless expression on his face. The road to the left led to his childhood sweetheart Hua Hua. His strongest ability was obtained from her seed. Did such an awesome childhood sweetheart really need him to fight side by side with her? The road to the right led to the twin witches, Red Lotus and White Lotus. Hey, was there anyone in the town able to imprison you? You are 2 hero-ranked, strong people who could even fly. Thinking about it, Yunshi felt that the world was so ridiculous. Sure enough, I should go meet with Hua Hua. Though in the hot spring White Lotus showed her love to him, but in Yunshi's heart, Hua Hua was the most important one. After all, They were childhood sweethearts who lived together for 10 years. Besides, she was also his first love, he knew her quite well. Since he had made the decision, Yunshi didn't hesitate anymore. He directly rushed out of the palace. Ka-la, Ka-la. In the hallway, a stone soldier holding a lance in its hand leaped into the air. It brandished its lance and locked on Yunshi's position. Third rank. It was a strong stone soldier at the third rank. Was its class lancer? The attack of a third rank was far more powerful than the attack of a second rank. Anyone who was at the third rank was certain to have mastered a method to improve his power, and could break out with a power that mortals could never imagine. They were the strongest presences amongst all mortals. Each one of them could be regarded as a valiant general, who could fight one against thousands of enemies. Ding! The wooden shield he had just enhanced played a role at this crucial moment. It helped Yunshi block the mortal blow from the sky. Quicksilver motion and flying swallow sword. Combat instinct waking up immediately, Yunshi struck back. Kai! 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 The sharp lance danced like a violent storm in the air, breaking through Yunshi's flying swallow sword from the center and thrusting into Yunshi's chest. The enhanced newbie cloth armor worked again. It helped Yunshi block the unknown third-rank strong person's thrust. Cough. Yunshi vomited out blood from his mouth as he quickly stepped back. The enemy was too strong. He was more powerful than the third-rank enemies Yunshi met before. Even the green hippo wasn't at the same level with him. He was apparently a veteran of many wars. His lance never drew back, he was really a violent general-like man. And his lance skill was also a military style, it had no extra skills except the killing techniques themselves. Who? He didn't give Yunshi the chance to adjust himself. After the thrusting, the violent general-like man swept Yunshi to the sky with his shield. Too bad, I lost my balance. Yunshi heard harsh howling. It was the fatal announcement of death. Just fight. Yunshi threw away the newbie wooden shield. He struck an unnatural pose and brandished his sword 9 times in the air. It was the secret sword skill he used to kill the owner of the snake-boned soft sword, a skill that could only be used after mastering flying swallow skill, killing his enemy by brandishing his sword 9 times from different angles and directions. Ah! With a surprised voice, the lance struck back 9 times on the 9 sword waves, breaking Yunshi's unique skill from the center again. He was too strong. What to do? Yunshi turned around in the air, standing on the stone pillar of the bridge. For the first time, he looked his opponent up and down. Yunshi surprisingly found that he wasn't a child of a noble family, but a real general wearing military armor. He even knew the general very well. When he was still young, the general and his army had passed by the small town more than once. Why is it him? Yunshi was dumbfounded. After all, he was a former general of the White Lotus Sword Domain, an army chief who had the title as battle deity. When he was young, the general was the idol of many boys in the town, and was the only third-rank person who emerged from the small town. As far as Yunshi knew, he was over 40 years old this year. Chapter 48. The 5 Great Generals. So, the trial didn't only pull the young childs of the noble families in here, but older people were in its selected ranges as well. Yunshi remembered that when he was young, a battle deity was a big deal. Not only him. There were also other generals who passed by the small town sometimes when they led their troops to go on patrol. They were called the 5 Tiger Generals and were seen as great heroes. When didn't the young boys and girls in the town regard themselves as their heroes? Well, Yunshi remembered what happened after Hua Hua dueled them. In the duel, Hua Hua beat the 5 people down at the same time. After that, Hua Hua replaced the position of the 5 generals, becoming the unquestionable number 1 in the hearts of all the young boys and girls in town. He remembered that the invitation of White Lotus Sword Palace was also sent to her at that time. Since a genuine battle deity was here, Yunshi had a hunch that the several big and tall stone soldiers behind him were. Yunshi raised his head up, looking at the several familiar faces. They looked like they were cut from the same mold. They all had strong muscles, big and tall bodies, finely tempered, fine steel lances, and looked like 5 standard lancers. Yes, they were the famous 5 Tiger Generals in the mortal army of the White Lotus Sword Domain, the successors of the ruinous star sect, which was located in the Swordblade region of the domain. It was said they were 5 cousins: Zhao Ming, Zhao Xiong, Zhao Chu, Zhao Chue, and Zhao Shen. These were the 5 tiger generals' names, and the true name of the general battle deity was Zhao Xiong. However, many people thought the 5 generals looked like they were cut from the same mold. No matter if it was their powerful muscles or frightening faces, it made everyone refuse to believe that they were not brothers. The reason people called them the 5 tiger generals was because their faces were too alike. General Zhao Xiong. Yun Shi adjusted his breath. This was the first time he would fight against a general who was so powerful that he alone could replace 1,000 normal enemies. Yun Shi felt a little nervous. No matter if it were battle skills, attack power, or fighting abilities, the green hippo who had only brute force couldn't be compared to General Zhao Xiong. Even if he ignored other factors, his simple sweep-away skill had already forced Yun Shi into a desperate situation. However, Huahua's seed sent him a strange piece of information. It seemed to be trying to tell Yun Shi that general battle deity Zhao Xiong wasn't unbeatable. At that time, when Huahua put herself against the 5 tiger generals and defeated them one by one, she wasn't at the 3rd rank, but at the 2nd rank, the same as Yun Shi. Is this true? If Yun Shi didn't obtain Huahua's seed, he would never have figured out that the 5 generals, who were also known as the 5 military strategists, had the same weakness. Well, it should be here. Yun Shi looked around, then skillfully dashed towards General Zhao Xiong. Oh! General Zhao Xiong looked pretty excited. In the dream, he seemed to have returned to the most important battle in his life. At that day, his opponent was also so tiny and nimble, it seemed as if he could easily beat her down by a sudden strike. However, in the end, the battle ended with his crushing defeat. Not only him, but his 4 brothers, Zhao Ming, Zhao Chu, Zhao Chue, and Zhao Shen, were all defeated by the little girl's sword. That was the first time he realized how wide the gap was among geniuses and ordinary people, and that battle also became the turning point of his life. After being defeated by the sword skill of the genius girl, he finally realized the limit of his talent. He understood that he probably couldn't step on the road of the hero rank during his lifetime. Then, he gave up. He followed his family's arrangement, marrying a wife and having a son. Now, his children were already old enough to hold a lance. Perhaps that was the limit of his life. He had been pinning all his hopes on his children. Now, his son had succeeded his blood. Though his son could only practice with a wooden lance now, but his lance skill already looked like his father's, and would definitely surpass him. However, sometimes, when he woke up from a dream, he couldn't stop himself from imagining what would have happened if he had won that duel. He thought he wasn't the only one who thought so. His brothers, who also had gotten married and had children, would also imagine that battle. Zhao Ming, Zhao Xiong, Zhao Chu, Zhao Chue, and Zhao Shen, they were called the 5 tiger generals. They must have cared about that duel too much, so they had this dream together. The opponent in their dream wasn't a girl. However, his sword skill and battle style looked exactly like the genius girl they remembered. What a wonderful dream! After that battle, they had reflected on it countless times. They practiced their lance skills, thinking about the mistakes they made in the battle over and over again. Now, they finally had the opportunity to fight again in the dream. Hee-ha! Zhao Xiong shouted. The lance he held rotated, drawing a circle in the air. He dashed towards Yun Shi. This was it. This was the feeling. The feeling that, though his strength and attacks held the advantage, his heart still beat heavily. Kid, try your best. Let's start a jolly and hearty fight. 1-on-1. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yun Shi took a few nimble steps, shielding the heavy lance arc by using his sword. Then, he showed his back to General Zhao Xiong, exposing his weakness on purpose. At the moment Yun Shi showed him his back, General Zhao Xiong's eyes suddenly turned red. His steel lance rotated like a drilling bit, starting his fatal violent lunge toward Yun Shi. Here it is, 5, 6. Yun Shi rolled over, which almost was at the extreme limit of the human body, and then jumped up on the edge of the bridge. Boom! General Zhao Xiong's lance furiously broke through the balustrade of the bridge. Then, he dropped down into the green water under the bridge without hesitation. Plop! With a loud noise, the water splashed 10 meters high. After about dozens of seconds, a ball of green soul of the stoned soldier flew to Yunxi. So that's true. Yunxi stood on the position General Zhao Xiong dashed down from on the bridge, looking at the traces caused by the severe friction. For a moment, he was stunned. The 5 Tiger generals were the successors of military strategists. They were experts in charging and breaking enemy positions by using their skilled lance skills, and they had a strong compulsion to attack when their opponents exposed their weakness. He could defeat them by using this tactic, making them have an error in judgment. This was the tactic Yunxi learned from Hua Hua's seed. It seemed that, though Hua Hua's sword had beat them down, they still couldn't remove this weakness of theirs, their compulsion to attack a perceived weakness. I see. So, Yunxi understood how to win against the 5 generals. They were too impetuous and especially had an unintelligible compulsion to attack weaknesses. He picked up the wooden shield, bravely walking towards the area where the remaining 4 generals guarded. Plop, 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 plop. Chapter 49, Mighty Dragon. How can it be so simple? By using the same method, Yunxi trapped Zhao Ming, Zhao Xiong, Zhao Chu, Zhao Chue, and Zhao Shen beside the bridge. He felt the number of the souls he absorbed and felt pretty confused. Weren't they 5 real 3rd-rank warriors? Compared to the stone army he met at the first stage, why were the famous 5 Tiger generals so easy to deal with? Were they too weak? No. Their attacking power and explosive force were both at the 3rd rank. If they fought recklessly with Yunxi one-on-one, they could even suppress Yunxi from all directions. If it wasn't because they had the same fatal weakness, Yunxi would have had to pay a great price to win against any of them. Maybe he would even have had to perish together with them. Hua Hua, what a genius you are. Every time Yunxi thought that he had overestimated Hua Hua's talent. Hua Hua's seed would tell him that he was at a way lower level than Hua Hua. When Hua Hua was still at the 2nd rank, the 5 Tiger generals' actions were full of weak points. Though they were at the 3rd rank, they were still merely 5 stronger boorish fellows in Hua Hua's mind. However, in the eyes of the townspeople, even in the eyes of the people of White Lotus Sword Domain, they all were invincible generals. 99% perspiration was more important than 1% inspiration. That was just a story adults used to cheat children. 1% inspiration was way more important than 99% perspiration. People who had no inspiration would finally reach their limit. In this world, only a genius who also practiced hard could reach the zenith, just like Hua Hua. Does Hua Hua really need my help? Feeling the increased strength in his body, Yunxi figured out the degree in which he had improved. The souls of the 5 Tiger generals were about 2 times more than the soul of the green hippo. What a great example the green hippo was. He decided that if he saw these kind of green hippos again, he would kill them as much as possible. Boom! A volcano erupted in front of Yunxi. Countless amounts of magma soared to the sky. For a moment, the dust and smoke rose from the volcanic vent and flew 10,000s of meters in the sky. Observing it from the ground, a small half of the sky was almost covered. Hua Hua, what are you fighting with? Looking at the exploding volcano, Yunxi was stunned for a long while. By using quicksilver motion, Yunxi turned into the wind, dashing to the central part of the burning volcano area. Along the way, Yunxi saw many bodies in separated parts. Every corpse was a strange beast, the beasts the people who just reached the small town owned. There were about 6 dead green hippos. About 6 dead white flying horses. A dead griffin. A dead King Kong. They all were giants or strange beasts. They were treasures belonging to the people in the town, some of them handed down by their owners' ancestors. Many strange beasts could live very long, way longer than humans. Training a baby beast from birth, by the time of its death, it could have even protected a family for dozen generations. In that case, how many strange beasts a big family had and how powerful their strange beasts were, directly showed how strong that family was. Ordinary people didn't have enough money and time to feed these fierce and strong beasts. However, those powerful strange beasts were all lying down in a pool of their own blood. Especially the several green hippos, Yunxi gazed at them with greed. Because they weren't killed by Yunxi, he obtained no souls from their corpses. He had to look at these carcasses messed up on the ground. Not one of them was alive. It seemed that, when Yunshi was struggling hard to fight with the stone soldier army, Hua Hua had cleared her way by entering the last battle. Yunshi even doubted himself. When he reached that place, would the side quest have already been completed by Hua Hua? Arrah! A heaven-shaking roar told Yunshi that the last battle hadn't finished yet. Side quest: the heroine challenging the evil dragon. Go find her and become her partner, defeat the evil dragon. After remembering the hint of the side quest, Yunshi knew what the strongest monster in the volcano area was. A dragon. No matter where you were, the Western god's domain or dragon's domain, a dragon meant absolute power, the master of dominant power. Dragon, even a worm, which had only a few drops of dragon blood, was the top hunter who stood at the peak of the food chain. As the side quest specially pointed out that it was an evil dragon, Yunshi couldn't imagine what kind of a vicious monster it was. Was Hua Hua fighting with such a monster? After dodging balls of flame continuously and stepping on fire and dust, Yunshi finally reached the central location of the volcano area, and saw two presences who were fighting. Dragon. It wasn't an earth dragon, wyvern, nor Aitvaras. It was a real male fiery dragon who had red-hot scales and was roaring. How was it possible that such a monster appeared near the small town? Wasn't it a nightmare which only inhabited volcanic areas? Male fiery dragon. It had terrible blood that could make it become a true giant dragon. It was a true dragon. It was about 18 meters in length, and its scales looked rough and crimson. You could vaguely see dark red striations on its wings. Even as he was still a few hundred meters away from it, he could feel its horrible atmosphere, which was known as dragon's dignity. A male fiery dragon. It was a real male fiery dragon. If male fiery dragons were immersed long enough in magma, it could evolve into a giant dragon who could control flames. Its wide wings, hard scales, and strong forelimbs all proved that it could tear any mortal in two pieces. No matter if it were the green hippo, the King Kong, or the white flying horse, they could not be compared to the fiery dragon who owned the blood of a fire-type giant dragon. The fiery dragon was a real hero-rank being. It was a super creature who could control flames and had dragon's dignity. However, what was it Yunshi saw now? The atrocious fiery dragon, who was so strong that it could swim in magma, had one of its wings cut off and only half of its tail remained. Its body was covered with scars. Hua Hua, who was just at the third rank, had driven the giant monster into the last ditch. This wasn't something like a second rank fighting against a third rank, but a mortal doing serious damage to a hero rank monster. Chapter 50. Dragon Battle-Maiden that was too powerful. Yunshi blankly looked at the both sides that were fighting each other violently, feeling Hua Hua's powerful talent again. No, it already couldn't be described as powerful. It was incredible. Everyone in every god's domain admitted that a mortal rank couldn't defeat a hero rank. Mortal's third rank of white leaf meant the limit of flesh and blood. Even inhuman monsters like the green hippo were still at this rank. Only hero rank of silver leaf were entitled to step in a higher realm. You could say that in essence, mortal rank creatures and hero rank creatures were already two different living beings. Taking the male fiery dragon and the green hippo as an example, an adult male fiery dragon could easily spit out flame at thousands of degrees, and his dragon aura field could shock and/or all creatures under the third rank. If this kind of monsters appeared on the battlefield of mortals, it wasn't as simple as an invincible enemy, but a nightmare who was going to exterminate all living being. Third rank and four-road rank. Mortals and heroes. This was a natural chasm. Ding! The cold sword light pierced the air, chopping at the angry male fiery dragon again. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yunshi exhausted his sight, finally barely seeing traces of Hua Hua's sword clearly. It was the flying swallow sword, but way stronger than the common flying swallow sword. Yunshi had to force all his strength to use the flying swallow sixfold attack, but any of Hua Hua's casual attacks easily reached 14 slashes. Not only that, they were all forced on one limb, there was no deviation. Hong! The male fiery dragon trampled the ground. All its scales suddenly emitted light, and then, a wall of fire shot up to the sky. The human mortal body certainly couldn't master this kind of ability. Flame control was a proof that the male fiery dragon was at hero rank. However, the wall of fire couldn't even ignite the corner of Hua Hua's clothes. Hua Hua stepped forward. Comparing to her use of the skill Quicksilver Motion, Yunshi blushingly felt that he himself was nothing. A moment later, she appeared behind the male fiery dragon. This time, it was her 24 times continuous attacks that were at lightning speed, and the position she chopped on was the male fiery dragon's tail, which was already a little broken. Roar! The angry male fiery dragon used its ultimate skill, which could kill all creatures whose rank was lower than 3rd rank. Dragon's roar. Terrible sound waves spread away. Even Yunshi, who was hundreds of meters away from there, was also involved in the skill. His eardrums nearly broke. Hua Hua flexibly brandished her sword, drawing traces in the air in a way that Yunshi was unable to understand, cutting and splitting the male fiery dragon from all directions. Hu! The dragon's roar, which was able to kill the 5 tiger generals at the same moment, just blew up a gust of wind, making her pretty horsetail flap in the air. After breaking the dragon's roar down, Hua Hua took a backward step and then jumped up in the next second. Gahu! The male fiery dragon saw that Hua Hua was jumping up, then its next actions made Yunshi feel inconceivable. Holding claws, protecting its eyes and head. Its body curled up with wings folded. Looked that it was very proficient. Hua Hua jumped up. She dragged her simple long sword, stroking her fingertip on the blade of the sword. Then, she dropped a few blood drops down on the sharp blade, adding the light, long sword a few blood-red color. The next moment, with a flash, a line in the air appeared in front of Yunshi's eyes. The male fiery dragon roared sadly and shrilly as one of its wings was chopped off from the middle. It was Sky Flying Sword. It was Yunshi's first time seeing Hua Hua's strongest sword skill, God's sword skill, with his own eyes. Only this kind of sword skill could chop off the defiant male fiery dragon's wing with one hit. After all, if it was Yunshi, his attack couldn't do any harm to the dragon's scales. By analogy, half of the dragon's tail and its wing on the other side were also chopped off by Hua Hua's God's sword skill. No wonder that it was Hua Hua's strongest hidden sword skill. It could even chop off the hero rank dragon's wings and tail. However, after using this skill, Hua Hua did not look happy at all. She didn't keep fighting with the male fiery dragon. Using her skill Quicksilver Motion continuously, she ran to a corner in the middle of the volcano area. Then, she took out a black stone to sharpen her sword. Her sword was turned, the weapon was lacking sharpness. When Yunshi fought with the green hippo, he was also facing this trouble, so he understood Hua Hua's action immediately. The male fiery dragon's scales were too hard. Even though Hua Hua's sword was made of stainless steel, an excellent weapon from White Lotus Sword Palace, but it was still not good enough to cut through dragon scales. Perhaps that was the only reason that Hua Hua hadn't killed the male fiery dragon yet. Her weapon wasn't sharp enough. If so, maybe. Yunshi checked his armory, finding a weapon which he regarded as a waste before. The standard two-handed sword of the Thunderbolt army in the Western God's domain. Its weight 108 kilograms. It could be used as a siege weapon. Hua Hua, use it. Yunshi took out the sword, which was too heavy for mortals, and threw it to Hua Hua. Little she, you're here. Hua Hua looked at Yunshi in surprise and happiness. She hurriedly stood up, tidying her little burnt dress. Because she had fought with the male fiery dragon for a long while, her clothes had been burnt a little apart. However, none of the parts were burned by the male fiery dragon's flames. It was burnt due to the igneous magma. Don't look at me. Little she, After realizing how embarrassing her dress was, Hua Hua's face turned red. You stupid dragon, it's all your fault. Gahu. The male fiery dragon didn't think so. It was just staying in the volcano, but Hua Hua came to it, chopping off its wings and tail. The male fiery dragon stared at them with tears welled up. Did I bother you? I just ate several humans, why must you chase after me till my nest? Hua Hua, sword. Yunshi never saw Hua Hua use two-handed swords, but he thought that Hua Hua should know how to use it. Oh, you're coming to give me a weapon, not bad, this dream. Hua Hua looked very happy to see the two-handed sword which Yunshi threw to the ground. I needed this kind of weapon. In that case, this stupid dragon is just dead meat. Woohoo! Though it didn't understand what Hua Hua was saying, the male fiery dragon still noticed the two-handed sword that Yunshi threw to Hua Hua. Suddenly, it shivered. The next moment, Yunshi saw the 3 steps that Hua Hua used to kill the male fiery dragon. The first step, Hua Hua moved to the heavy sword, picking it up by using only one hand. The second step, Hua Hua jumped up. The blood that slipped from her fingers stained the heavy sword, which was able to kill the dragon. The third step, a giant V crack appeared in the air. It tore the male fiery dragon into 2 pieces. That was how the heroine killed the evil dragon. Chapter 51, Sky Sword, TianXiang Sword, Hong. The male fiery dragon's mountain-like huge body toppled down on the ground. Its 4 limbs twisted and struggled and its dragon's roar shook the earth. Yunshi was caught off guard. The afterwind of the dragon's roar blew him to the sky. How dare you! At first, Hua Hua was going to kill the male fiery dragon without pain, but now, her anger flared up. The two-handed sword, which was made by the Thunder Army in the Western God's domain, was stained with Hua Hua's blood again. 1 hit, 2 hits. Yunshi hadn't landed on the ground but saw one sword lights after another take off towards the male fiery dragon. Every sword light was as nimble as a bird flying in the sky. Every sword light was as heavy as a meteorite hitting the ground. Extremely heavy and extremely light. 2 different properties perfectly blended together on Hua Hua's sword. Breaking its claws, docking its tail, chopping its wings, cutting its bones and mincing its flesh. When faced with Hua Hua's godlike sword skill, the male fiery dragon, who arrogantly detonated the volcano, was meat on a chopping board. He was completely minced. Swish. As the last action, Hua Hua threw the two-handed sword to the sky, then continuously used quicksilver motion for 3 times, which was so fast that you may wonder if her ankles would break. She rushed below Yunshi, then leaped up, holding Yunshi in her arms in the air. A perfect pose of hero saving the princess. However, Yunshi wasn't the hero. He was the princess who was saved. Kai. The two-handed sword dropped down, directly sticking the male fiery dragon's head, pinning the scarred giant monster on the ground. The evil dragon was killed. Little she, don't come to such a dangerous place. I'm happy to take the sword you gave me, but this big one was a little too powerful for you. Though she said that, her face was full of happiness, even Yunshi could clearly see it. A little powerful. Yunshi dumbly looked at the male fiery dragon, who was sliced and diced but still giving off an appalling sense of pressure. It was a hero-rank monster, known as a nightmare who had the power to eliminate a whole army. Before today, he saw Hua Hua using her god's sword skill, Sky Flying Sword, beginner. Yunshi had made many guesses about what was the god's sword skill. However, even his wildest guess was still pale and weak if compared to Hua Hua's record of killing the male fiery dragon. The power of God's sword skill, Sky Flying Sword, was way beyond Yunshi's understanding, and it was also beyond the common sense of the people of Sky Sword God's domain. As a 3rd-rank sword maiden, she could kill the hero-rank male fiery dragon as easily as if it were an ant. That was how terrible and powerful the Sky Flying Sword was. Yunshi had never heard of such a sword skill. Jumping down from Hua Hua's arms, Yunshi walked to the male fiery dragon's corpse, which still retained the temperature of the flames. He aimed at the area where the defense was most weak, the connection part between the wing and body. 9 sword lights burst out together, which meant that Yunshi had completely mastered the strongest skill from Hua Hua's seed, Flying Swallow Sword. Hiss. Though the newbie iron sword had been enhanced for 3 times, it only made a screeching sound on the male fiery dragon's patagium, and only made several light scratches on it. After a few seconds, the scratches also disappeared. What, after trying it himself, Yunshi really understood how terrible a hero-rank being could be. It was the weakest part of the dragon. Besides, after being killed by Hua Hua, the male fiery dragon's corpse had lost the support from its blood and energy. If the male fiery dragon was still alive, and had its blood and energy as support, even if Yunshi attacked it all day, he probably couldn't deal any damage to it. Yunshi's ultimate attack could hurt a third-rank swordsman, but couldn't even damage the male fiery dragon's weakest spot. That was the difference between the mortal rank and the hero rank. When faced with a monster like the male fiery dragon, mortals, even if it was an army of 100,000, were just a number. As the being who had hero rank power, it could kill mortals as though it was crushing ants. Hua Hua, you're too strong. The more he knew Hua Hua, the more Yunshi found how unusual his childhood sweetheart was. She couldn't belong to this common small town. As a girl who knew how to use the god's sword skill, Sky Flying Sword, she could even ignore the difference between the hero rank and the mortal rank to kill the male fiery dragon. If this was a story from the Western god's domain, she definitely had the talent as a hero. That was not much. As hearing Yunshi's praise, Hua Hua blushed, seeming a little sheepish. It was just a male fiery dragon. If it was a female fiery dragon, it would be big trouble. However, the male fiery dragon was moving alone, it shouldn't have a spouse. So, I used it to practice my sword skill after I found it. I knew. You were so brilliant like the stars or the wide ocean. Your smile was so bright, just like the sun. You were my most excellent childhood sweetheart. Yunshi raised his head up, gazing at Hua Hua. Always, he knew that Hua Hua was a genius, a sword genius who was far better than all the people in the town. Now, he would correct it. Hua Hua wasn't only a genius on sword skill. She was also a genius on battles. With the passage of time, she would naturally emit more bright light, leaving every contemporary behind her. Yunshi, thank you. Comparing to her behavior when she was killing the male fiery dragon, under Yunshi's gaze, Hua Hua looked pretty rattled. Yunshi saw her unladylike behavior, but she had no choice. Though it was just a male fiery dragon, but her weapon was too subpar. In order to kill it, she had to use the Sky Flying Sword. Would Yunshi think that she was too violent? Because, in the past, she always left him the expression as a cheerful and lively sword girl. However, she broke the male fiery dragon's claws, head, wings, and tail, and finally sliced and minced it. It did make her a little unlike a lady. Oh, that was all the stupid dragon's fault. Hua Hua pouted, kicking on the male fiery dragon's head, though it had already totally died. Hua Hua, Yunshi looked at his childhood sweetheart, with many ideas passing in his heart. Yunshi, Hua Hua lowered her head and peeped at Yunshi. For a moment, two people fell into a weird silence. Until Yunshi heard the ethereal and antique voice of stars suddenly appearing beside his ears. Side quest completed. Please receive your reward. Then, a transparent line, which Yunshi looked pretty familiar with, suddenly appeared between Hua Hua and himself, linking the two people together. Inside of Yunshi's body, Hua Hua's seed started to grow fast again. Not only so, the completion degree of Hua Hua's seed started to drop sharply. 31%, 27%, 15%. As Yunshi looked at it incredulously, the completion degree of Hua Hua's seed dropped to 1%. Chapter 52. Hua Hua joins the team. It wasn't because the skills Yunshi obtained from Hua Hua were decreasing. Quite the opposite, there was more information flowing from Hua Hua to Yunshi's body, expanding the limit of the seed. Quicksilver motion, perfect. Flying swallow sword, perfect. Sky flying sword, beginner 10% done. When he obtained the seed from Hua Hua, the information about this part were all hidden in mist, but now, they all opened to Yunshi. After stepping into the second rank and finishing the side quest, help the girl defeat the evil dragon, not only did the closeness degree between Yunshi and Hua Hua increase, but it also let him obtain more benefits from Hua Hua. As the completion degree of the seed dropped from 33% to 1%, that also meant that the information Yunshi obtained from Hua Hua was increasing to a new realm. Even the sky flying sword, which Hua Hua used to kill the male fiery dragon, also showed its truths to Yunshi for the first time. Though it had only been analyzed by less than 10%, but as a terrible god's sword skill, it had opened a door leading to a new realm for Yunshi. This time, the seed expanded 10 times. The most data was about god's sword skill, which Yunshi greatly desired and was also the most important part. Quicksilver motion, perfect, and flying swallow sword, perfect, were the precondition to study Sky Flying Sword. As long as Yunshi followed the steps recorded in Huahua's seed, to practice the two secret skills to their limits, he would touch the door leading to God's sword skill. Yunshi even saw a mark in Huahua's seed, which he never saw before. It was an area which Yunshi couldn't understand now. Huahua, who the hell are you? After the seed updated its data, Yunshi felt that his childhood sweetheart became more and more mysterious. She was like an inexhaustible treasury. Every time he learned something new from the seed, he would then find that more unknown knowledge was hiding in the original seed. If Yunshi didn't have high affinity with the original seed, he would probably never guess what wonderful talent and sword skill his childhood sweetheart owned. Perhaps choosing her seed in the newbie trial was the best choice Yunshi had made. Yunshi, is there anything on my face? As Huahua curiously looked at Yunshi, she didn't know that Yunshi had found her secret. As a god's sword skill, Sky Flying Sword wasn't a skill that everyone could see through. It was a topmost legacy from a faraway god's domain, even better than the Twin Witches' legacy. Of course, the Twin Witches also had phenomenal talent. They were already beyond the White Lotus Sword domain's witches' legacy. Even in the Western gods' domains, they were still very famous. No. Huahua, we meet again. Yunshi pretended that he knew nothing. How could he tell her the truth? He couldn't tell her that he had her seed and had seen a lot of secrets from it. If things kept going on like this, would the seed forever link Huahua and me together? No matter how long the distance between us was, would we always share this special relationship? The stars, what is in your mind? Wasn't the seed system too strange? If the seed's completion degree went to 100%, what would happen? Great. Tonight's dream is really a good dream. It's too lucky to meet a monster who could be used to practice my skills on. Besides, Yunshi was slaying the dragon together with me. Huahua smiled so much that her eyes almost narrowed shut, as her horse tail swung in the air. However, little she, this is just a dream. In the real world, I won't be so violent to cut the dragon into pieces. And I'm only good at using Flying Swallow Sword. Yunshi looked on weirdly seeing his childhood sweetheart's nonsense. Well, if I didn't have your seed, I would think Flying Swallow Sword was your strongest sword skill. After all, it was the Flying Swallow Sword which she used to defeat the 5 tiger generals. However, if compared to the terrible Sky Flying Sword, Flying Swallow Sword was just like a feeble small bird. Besides, why were you so skilled when you used the two-handed sword? The beheading skill could even cut the dragon into 2 pieces. It was really way too powerful. Little she, you don't like a strong girl? Huahua vaguely felt that something was wrong. She asked her childhood sweetheart carefully. No. I like the way you are. The Huahua who can use Flying Swallow Sword and the Huahua who can slay the dragon, they both are my Huahua. Looking at Huahua, who seemed a little restless, sincere words naturally came out from Yunshi's mouth. Yay. Great. This dream is great. Huahua put her palms together devoutly and yelled with excitement. Ah, yes. Huahua was always lively and confident. She is my childhood sweetheart and my first love. Looking at the cheerful Huahua, Yunshi smiled faintly. However, he didn't know why, but a girl with white witch uniform suddenly appeared in his heart. Yes, the trial was still going on. He should continue fighting. The side quest of the girl fighting against the evil dragon had been completed. Huahua's favorability had been increased and Huahua's seed had also been updated. The next, he should go challenge the ultimate goal. Save the princess from the giant tower. That was the ultimate goal of his formal trial. Huahua, goodbye. As waving his hand to Huahua, Yunshi was ready to step on the new battlefield. Hey, little she, where are you going? Huahua came after him. Wait, why didn't Huahua disappear? Yunshi inanely looked at his childhood sweetheart walking toward him. The side quest had been completed, and he had also obtained the reward. Shouldn't Huahua return to the real world? Just like what happened at the end of the last trial? No, there was something different this time. Quickly, Yunshi realized the difference. Last time, in the newbie trial, he completed the ultimate goal before Huahua caught him. He perfectly finished the trial, letting Hua Hua return to the real world and treat the whole event as a dream. Now, Hua Hua was just a part of the side quest. After defeating the male fiery dragon, she didn't disappear, because Yunxi hadn't completed the ultimate goal of the trial. In other words, he had to challenge the ultimate goal together with his childhood sweetheart. Well, he was glad to know that Hua Hua would team up with him since she could be really helpful. However, Yunxi had a strong sense of foreboding. What? Yunxi, you will go to challenge enemies to practice your sword skill? Tell me, who dared to hurt you? I will kill them all. Don't be shy. No matter who they are, as long as they dare to hurt my little Shi, they can only die. My blade is yours. Chapter 53. The third district. In the formal trial, in front of the third district, Yunxi was standing together with Hua Hua aside the flaming bonfire. Here was the only way to the tall tower. Not far away, there were dozens of third-rank people scattered on the huge bridge. Looking into the distance, on the square below their ultimate goal, the tall tower, there were 3 red stone soldiers standing amongst a group of top-level stone soldiers. Obviously, they were Yunxi's last enemies before he entered the Great Tower. Yunxi had even guessed out the identity of the 3 red stone soldiers. In the small town, except Hua Hua, the twin witches, the strange beasts and the male fiery dragon, everyone knew who the strongest 3 people were. They were from the noblest families of the White Lotus Sword domain, they receiving the best education since their childhood, having best weapons and talent. In a word, they were the hottest 3 people in this exam of the Sword Palace. Child Yun He, Child Xin Yan, and Child San Quan. Is that all? After seeing the stone soldiers on the bridge and square, Hua Hua dragged the 2-handed sword as her toes lightly touched the ground. Swish. With a flash of her sword, Hua Hua didn't give Yunxi the chance to say anything. She killed all the third-rank enemies on the bridge. As some of the mortal rank's strongest people, they all were not inferior to the 5 tiger generals. Many of them were servants of noble families, a few of them were even famous masters of noble families. However, they couldn't even hold for 1 second when facing Hua Hua. Instant kill, and instant kill. Like cutting grass, Hua Hua killed all the so-called strong people instantaneously. Wait, Hua Hua. When Yunxi reacted, Hua Hua had already stepped in the last square. No kidding. If he let Hua Hua kill them all, he wouldn't obtain a piece of their souls like the dragon scales. That was the answer Yunxi got from the volcano zone. This trial was a battlefield the stars prepared for him, not for Hua Hua, who was at 3rd rank, but could actually kill the hero rank male fiery dragon. So, even if he had to borrow Hua Hua's power, that wouldn't happen before he had to face an unbeatable enemy which would probably appear in his ultimate goal, the Great Tower. As for the enemies who were under the hero rank, no matter how strong they were, Hua Hua could kill them all in an instant. So, he decided to kill them by himself. With the aid of an external force, perhaps he could sweep away all the enemies in this zone quite simply, but that did no help to increase his personal ability. Tut, what a troublesome rule. After knowing of Yunxi's trial, Hua Hua felt a little aggrieved and pouted her small mouth. In her mind, they were just some wastes that she could kill by the tens with 1 brandish of her sword. But her little she still had to strenuously beat them down 1 by 1. That was too weird. I will borrow your power at the last moment. Let's fight together by that time. After advising her earnestly, finally Yunxi stopped Hua Hua from her desire to kill all the enemies at once. To Hua Hua, the trial in the 3rd district was nothing, but an extremely easy mode. She could even clean the district with her eyes closed. However, to Yunxi, this was a bloody trial which needed him to challenge his limit, understanding the true wisdom by wandering between life and death. Here we go. Though it was a death trial, but as Hua Hua followed and looked at him, Yunxi felt that his spirit was strangely high. Showing his growth to his girl, his childhood sweetheart, his first love, that made him pretty joyful. Inside of his body, it seemed that Hua Hua's seed also felt his happiness and Hua Hua's sincerity. It started to grow sturdily. Kid, go die. On the square, at the moment the top-level stone soldiers found Yunxi, they yelled and rushed at him together. The difficulty had increased. That was Yunxi's personal feeling. Even in the first district, the stone soldiers rushed forward together to attack him, but their rank wasn't higher than second rank. And in the volcano district, the 5 generals were challenging him one by one. If he didn't learn their weakness from Huahua's seed, he couldn't easily entice them to fall into the water and get drowned to death. Now, these third-rank stone soldiers started to group together again to fight. However, something had been changed. After completing the side quest of the girl fight against the evil dragon, and updating his seed from Huahua, though Yunxi's body didn't become super strong, and the souls of the 5 tiger generals weren't more than 2 green hippos worth of souls. However, his combat intuition, talent, and his use of quicksilver motion, middle level, and flying swallow sword, middle level, had been improving rapidly. After experiencing the bloody killing in the first district and seeing Huahua's godlike sky flying sword, Yunxi knew better than anyone what a wide gap was between Huahua and himself. He also had a strong desire to become stronger. You are nothing more than this. His enemies were at 3rd rank. So what? They were more experienced on fighting? So what? I can't kill you all as easy as Huahua, but you also can't beat me down with ease. As he used quicksilver motion, his ankles made slightly ominous sounds. That meant that he had reached the limit of his body and had reached the limit of a mortal. Hovering the flying swallow sword in the air, he didn't use the stronger skill, flashing 9 sword lights, but used the most simple and elegant skill, the original flying swallow triple attack. However, this time, the flying swallow sword was being used when he was surrounded by 4 third-rank strong people and dozens of other people. His actions were perfect. His breathing didn't change. His heart was strongly beating in his body, but his mood was unexpectedly calm. Peace of mind. Enhance your background. Drawing out his sword. Swish. A third-rank stone soldier, who tried to be the first to attack Yunxi, looked at Yunxi in disbelief. The next moment, his head slipped down to the ground, spurting vast amounts of blood in the air. For the first time, Yunxi did it. He didn't use any trick, but defeated a third-rank strong person face-to-face, in an unfriendly environment that was surrounded by tens of enemies. The gap between 2 mortals had a limit. That was what Yunxi learned from Huahua's seed. Even a monster who was strong like the green hippo could be hurt by a firewood chopper. Strong men like the 5 tiger generals could also be drowned in the sea. When confronted with sword and blade, everyone in the mortal rank would get hurt. They couldn't ignore a mortal's attack like what the hero rank male fiery dragon did. Mortal rank meant flesh and blood. You would shed blood if you were cut by a sword, and you would die if your head was cut off. What was the difference between first-rank people and third-rank people? The difference was that, when faced with a knife, one was a piece of paper and another one was a stack of papers. You are not unbeatable. Yunxi stepped back and dodged a series of slashes. Then he striked back, cutting off an arm from a third-rank person. Blood sprayed on the blade, reflecting his resolute eyes. Chapter 54. Irresistible force. Brandish his sword, draw back his sword, kick away the enemies. As if he was a swallow flying in the sky, Yunxi flew amongst a group of well-armed burly men. By using his evolved quicksilver motion and flying swallow sword, he dealt with the crowd like a fish in water. 1, 2, 3. 3 heads successively slipped off to the ground, spurting blood in the sky. For the first time he assaulted the 3rd district, Yunxi had killed 3 third-rank enemies and cut off 2 people's arms. He got a really fruitful result. The trial wouldn't become easy due to his improvement. When Yunxi showed his strongest state to fight against these third-rank stone soldiers, an accident happened. An arrow was shot at him from a distance, flying through the crowd and cutting through one of Yunxi's hand, the hand he used to hold his sword. Win or loss, the battle between masters often ended in a flash. Not to mention that the trial Yunxi had to face was so cruel. That was a third-rank archer. Yunxi felt a little surprised as he looked at the archer in red, standing alone at the end of the bridge. In the next second, his eyes filled with blood. Aga! My little she! After seeing Yunxi being hacked to death by the crowd, Huahua's eyes turned red. Even after Yunxi had told her that, as long as the bonfire was still burning, he could revive from it, so she didn't need to care much about his death. However, After seeing her childhood sweetheart miserably dying in front of her, how could she bear it? How was it possible to bear it? Hua Hua would never bear it. You wastes, how dare you to do this to my little she? You all, go to hell. Drawing her two-handed heavy sword, Hua Hua turned into a terrible shadowy figure again. That definitely wasn't something that any other third-rank human could do. One brandish, two pieces. The two-handed sword could even be used to collapse a city gate. But now, it turned into a light of killing, cutting all the third-rank stone soldiers on the bridge in half. As for the archer in red, who gave Yunshi a critical shot, he was the priority target Hua Hua paid attention to. The archer was sliced and diced by her. That only took her 3 seconds. And you, go die. After coming through the bridge by killing, Hua Hua aimed at the last 3 red stone soldiers of the 3rd district. Go. Watch out. Who is this monster? Child Yun He, Child Xin Yan, and Child San Quan entered the battle. 3 seconds later, Hua Hua dragged her two-handed heavy sword, peevishly walking back to the bonfire. Behind her was a sea of corpses and blood. 10 seconds later, as usual, he revived beside the bonfire. Then, he speechlessly looked at the sea of green souls as they slowly rebuilt their bodies. Hua Hua, what did you do to them? Why did they all die? It seemed that if he stayed together with Hua Hua, the enemies who were killed by her would also become green souls. However, Hua Hua couldn't absorb these green souls, neither could he. So, these green souls would revive again and turn back to their original bodies. As Yunshi was ready to challenge the cruel 3rd district again, Hua Hua stretched out her hand. Little she, don't keep doing it. Don't keep doing what? Yunshi quizzically looked at his childhood sweetheart. He knew he had used all the power from Hua Hua's seed. You're imitating me, but we're different. Hua Hua seriously gazed at Yunshi. Though in the dream Yunshi was so cool and excellent, and she was glad to see it, but a defect was a defect. She must tell it to him. Different. Yunshi also slightly realized that the world in Hua Hua's eyes was different from the world in his eyes. He couldn't say the details. However, after Hua Hua pointed it out, he had realized this problem, which was ignored by him all this time. Your arm length, body height, and physique are all different from mine. Flying swallow sword isn't a big problem for you, because you have enough flexibility and dexterity. The problem is the quicksilver motion. Hua Hua lowered her body and held Yunshi's foot, carefully observing the bones and shape of his foot, then took off his shoes. Because Yunshi just finished ectasis not long ago, his skin was abnormally white, not looking like a boy's feet. Because his ectasis was evolving according to Hua Hua's seed, so the flexibility and dexterity of his body were unconsciously biased toward Hua Hua. However, feet were the limbs that humans used the most, and was also the most sophisticated body parts that muscles developed very well. 16 years of experience remained Yunshi a deep impression, which caused a little incongruity. Well, as I thought, here is untrained. Little she, quicksilver motion does a huge burden to the feet. Your feet still can't withstand the explosive force of quicksilver motion. Hua Hua rubbed Yunshi's feet and told him the matter needing attention. Ah, so that's the reason. Yunshi finally understood what the incongruity he felt was. That was true. Just like what Hua Hua said, when he used quicksilver motion to the limit, his ankles would give bad cries. That was the telltale sign of overexertion. To other third-rank people, it was already enough if their speed could be as fast as the middle-level quicksilver motion. However, Yunshi's flaw was too big in Hua Hua's eyes. Just now, the archer in red aimed at the position you were going to go. You had forced yourself to reach the limit, so you were no longer able to make any change to your trajectory. So that meant you couldn't dodge the arrow. Besides, you pay too much attention to close combat, and you don't have the experience to deal with ranged attacks. I can teach you. Hua Hua's soft words made her Yunshi's first and best battle tutor. Finally, Yunshi understood how many ridiculous mistakes he made in his seemingly satisfactory performance. Oh, certainly, people were not the same. The wandering green souls revived in the 3rd district one by one, waiting for Yunshi's challenge. Then, I'm going. Holding the newbie iron sword in his, for the second time, Yunshi walked to the cruel 3rd district. After drawing a lesson from his first try, this time, he didn't rashly force his body to reach the limit, but saved his strength in order to use Quicksilver motion at any time. As he dodged the attacks from dozens of third-strong people, he also kept seeking the best timing to attack. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. As Yuan-Shi killed the 10th person, the archer in red finally found his weak point by using intuition, and killed him in one shot. This archer is not simple. Looking at the black arrow cutting through his heart, Yuan-Shi murmured and fell to the ground. Aga, my little Shi. Seeing her childhood sweetheart's death with her own eyes, Hua got mad again. 10 seconds later, after Yuan-Shi revived beside the bonfire, he saw a lot of green souls floating above a sea of blood again. Chapter 55, Title at End Kai. Yuan-Shi took an arrow in the knee. Kai. Yuan-Shi took an arrow in the shoulder. Kai. Yuan-Shi took an arrow in the head. There wasn't any exception. Every time Yuan-Shi got shot by the archer in red, he would be chopped by all sorts of weapons in the next second. In this battle of mortal ranks, such an archer who could fire at the target 100 times without a single miss was surely the deadliest killer. Yuan-Shi proved that by dying 30 times. Hua also left Yuan-Shi's enemies with a nightmare forever by her 30 massacres. Again, Yuan-Shi revived beside the bonfire. As he was ready to rush to the stone soldiers and fight with them, Hua grabbed his hand. This can't go on, little Shi. Right now, you can't defeat the archer. If you don't make yourself stronger, even if you overdraw your limit, you can't walk through the bridge. Yuan-Shi paused for a while, then he relaxed his body and sat on the ground. Yes, Hua was right. Now, even if he used his second rank power and Hua's third rank combat intuition to the limit, he still couldn't pass through the bridge. After all, he wasn't Hua. For the first time, Yuan-Shi clearly felt his limit. 1, 2, 3. Even the third rank stone soldiers on the bridge attacked him together. If he paid the price of dying hundreds of times, he probably still couldn't pass through the bridge even if meant that he had to die for many more times. However, the archer in red was out of his expectations. Yuan-Shi didn't know who the mysterious archer was. No matter how perfectly he used his second-rank Quicksilver motion, the archer could still find his weak point among the crowd and give him a critical shot. The archer didn't even need to hit the arrow at his crucial point. In fact, Yuan-Shi was only directly killed by the arrow very few times. The archer's goal was to break Yuan-Shi's rhythm. Yuan-Shi's Quicksilver motion looked like floating clouds and flowing water, but that was built on his strong pre-assessment. When faced with a dozen third-rank masters, every second he slightly stayed at the same place would lead to a dead end. What an awesome archer! But the archer's battle style doesn't look like it's from the White Lotus sword domain. Sitting by the bonfire, Yuan-Shi observed the white-haired young person, who carried a two-handed long bow behind the back and wore red clothes. I tried not to show the archer's gender because that was a she. White Lotus sword domain was a lower domain of Sky sword domain. Most of the people there practiced sword skills. If there was such an archer that mastered such a terrible archery, he should already be as famous as the 5 tiger generals. He should be a stealth archer who majors in the long bow, and his close combat power is also good. Look, he wears 2 swords at the waist. Those 2 aren't ornaments, but true lethal weapons. Hua pointed at the archer in red, the person who caused his 30 failures. He should have a locking skill like the mind's eye, and he should also have the eagle eye. If I'm not wrong, he should have found his way to hero rank. Maybe he is a little weaker than the last 3 guys, but his potential is far beyond them. If he had a spirit weapon rank bow, he can cause 3 times the threat. Fortunately, his weapon is just SOSO. After Hua pointed out the mysterious archer's talents one by one, Yuan-Shi finally understood what kind of an opponent he was facing. If even Hua also praised the archer, that meant that he was way better than the 5 tiger generals. The archer was very likely to reach hero rank in the future. No wonder he looked unlike the other stone soldiers. His red clothes and white hair made him look like a crane standing among chickens. However, he still wanted to win. No matter what he faced, he must pass the trial and become stronger. For Yuan-Shi, it was very rare to have such an impulse. Compared to this, his ultimate goal of saving the princess wasn't that important. The more hard it was to get, the more eager one was to get it. Perhaps that was the commonality of all humans. Hua Hua, have you got any strategy? Holding his newbie iron sword, Yunshi was ready to fight again. Now, no. Hua Hua carefully counted the gap between him and the stone soldiers, then shook her head. Though Yunshi had exerted his talents to the fullest, but that was still too early for him to challenge a trial at this level. It wasn't good to die so many times. She still felt love dearly. So, I can't. Even Yunshi had guessed this answer already, but when he heard it coming from Hua Hua's mouth, he still felt frustrated. No. Even if the answer is no, I still can't give up. He couldn't retreat. Compared with the apostle candidates or true apostles he might encounter later on, this wasn't harsh at all. Why did the stars create this trial world? That was for tempering his will and improve his strength step by step. There were just a dozen third-rank people and a mysterious archer. Would they make him give up? He would never give up. I want to win, so, sorry, Hua Hua. Hua Hua. I will do something to you. Can you forgive me? After thinking it over and over again, Yunshi only got one idea in his mind. The stars, forgive me. This was the only strategy that my simple brain could imagine. Yes. I forgive you, little she. Hua Hua curiously looked at Yunshi. Was he willing to let her help him pass the trial? In fact, the trial really pissed her off. She couldn't bear the trial because it forced her little she to die, again and again. Then, close your eyes, Hua Hua. Yunshi stealthily walked up to Hua Hua with a red face. Gee, little she, what do you want to do? No. Looking at Yunshi's face getting closer and closer, Hua Hua was in a dither. No, when did her little she become so daring? And why does he look so skillful? Whoa. As Hua Hua cried out in alarm, Yunshi softly kissed Hua Hua's lips. It wasn't their first kiss. In their childhood, he had secretly kissed her in their children's play. However, this time, it was different. Looking at Hua Hua, Yunshi managed to muster up all his courage to take this step. You know, not long ago, his childhood sweetheart used a two-handed sword to cut a male fiery dragon into pieces. To kiss such a Hua Hua was like challenging the evil dragon. If Hua Hua wasn't his childhood sweetheart, Yunshi wouldn't dare try it. Hua Hua's lips were soft and sweet. They were still as warm as in Yunshi's memory. At the moment he kissed Hua Hua's lips, Yunshi clearly felt that inside of his body, Hua Hua's seed acted like a dry plant that suddenly got irrigated. It started to grow up at a ridiculous speed. 1%, 2%, 3%. Chapter 56, The Dawn of Victory Wu. Sitting beside the bonfire, Hua Hua's little finger drew a circle on the ground round and round. My little she is corrupted. You were bullying me. Her beautiful cheeks all blushed to the root of her ears. If you looked carefully, you would find that in her dewy big eyes, there was excitement and agitation. Because the relationship between Yunshi and her had a rapid advance just now. To Hua Hua, it was a great advance. Unlike all their kisses in the past, this time, Yunshi's kiss had a special meaning. Ah, what a wonderful world. She decided to keep this dream firmly in her mind. She must kept it in her mind. She didn't want it to become fuzzy like the dream she dreamed last time. Ta. Among the big burly stone soldiers, Yunshi jumped up. However, his eyes kept gazing at the dangerous archer in red. Just as he expected, at the moment he jumped up, the white-haired archer in red shot an arrow at him. The arrow rotated like a black hound jumping in the air. If he got hit, it would definitely cut through his body. Now, Yunshi held the newbie iron sword horizontally in front of himself and blocked the bloody hound-like arrow in time, then jumped out of the encirclement. Flying Swallow sixfold attack. The nimble sword light flashed among the crowd. The sharp strengthened blade of the newbie iron sword cut off the third-rank enemies' heads one after another. This time, the speed of Flying Swallow sixfold attack didn't reach the limit that Yunshi could reach. However, it was way more easy and smooth than any Flying Swallow sixfold attack he used before. The connection between his two moves was near perfect. Kai. At the very moment Yunshi just finished his flying swallow sixfold attack, the second sniper arrow was shot at him. This time, it was a lightning speed arrow, and was shot at him through the crowd. If Yunshi didn't kiss Hua Hua just now, he wouldn't be able to dodge this arrow. Ding! Still, at the critical moment, Yunshi's focus reached a new height. He blocked the arrow, and using the impacting force of the arrow, he used Quicksilver motion to step back, breaking away from the battle. Step back. This was what Hua Hua's seed taught Yunshi after its high-speed growth. Temporarily stepping back wasn't equal to escaping, but for the sake of accumulating stronger power for the following attack. It was extremely attractive to play one's power to the best and dancing the blade of battle. However, Yunshi wasn't Hua Hua. He wasn't able to do that. So, by combining it with his own characteristics, he decided to challenge his opponents and also grasped the dominant right in his own hands at the same time. That should be the best tactic. Now, after kissing Hua Hua, Yunshi finally grew to a degree that was able to do this. 3% growth degree. That not only improved Yunshi's physical fitness, but also made his understanding of battles reach a new level. For the first time, he tried to let Hua Hua's talent fit his body and change his battle style. In the past, he was too reliant on the power of Hua Hua's seed. It could even be called a superstition. He thought that, as long as he could play the power of the seed to the limit, he would never be defeated till he met the terrible archer in red. He finally understood that Hua Hua and him were different. When Hua Hua was at the second rank, she could pass this through the bridge and no one could stop her. However, he couldn't. The thing he could do was different from Hua Hua. Admitting it made him understand Hua Hua's power much more and absorb the properties of Hua Hua's seed in the meanwhile. Hua Hua could turn into a flying sword to kill the giant dragon, to kill everything refusing to obey her. As for him, the thing he could do now was flying swallow. Triple attack. The sharp blade of sword flew in the air like a flying swallow. It shot down an arrow and cut off 3 high-level stone soldiers' arms at the same time. He didn't need to give them critical attacks every time. He just needed to cut down their battle power bit by bit. As long as he could control the rhythm of the battle, he could finally obtain victory. The kiss with Hua Hua was the kiss of the goddess of victory that could bring him the dawn of victory. Ka-la. Ka-la. In the face of Yunshi's sword, the last stone soldier's body also toppled down to the ground. A smile appeared on Yunshi's sweaty face. He did it. Now, in the entire 3rd district, there was only the last 3 red stone soldiers and the archer in red, who were standing at the end of the bridge. The archer in red didn't give Yunshi time to take a rest, but took the bow and adjusted the arrow, then shot to the sky. Come on. Yunshi rushed to the last enemies on the bridge. Cough. Bruised, Yunshi dragged his tired body to return to the bonfire. Little she. Hua Hua lovingly looked at Yunshi. After walking through the bridge, Yunshi didn't step in the square immediately, but walked back to the bonfire. The last enemy, the archer in red, was more powerful than Yunshi's expectation. Double arrow, shattering arrow, spiraling arrow, and tracking arrow. Just in order to go to him, Yunshi's body had been covered with blood. The most desperate thing was that this guy's close combat ability wasn't any inferior than his archery. After sublimating Hua Hua's seed, Yunshi still fought with him for over 100 turns, then finally beat him down by using his enhanced newbie iron sword. If it was said in a rude manner, perhaps among all the people Yun 11'd seen, the archer in red was a person who was only second to Hua Hua. If Yunshi didn't have the enhanced Hua Hua's seed, he was no match for him. The thing which finally determined the winner was the gap between their weapons. As Hua Hua said, the archer's 2 swords were made up of stainless steel, but it was still inferior compared to Yunshi's newbie iron sword, which had been enhanced to its limit. After defeating the tough archer in red, Yunshi was exhausted. He had to return to the bonfire to take a rest. Plop. After walking back to the bonfire zone and feeling the warm fire again, Yunshi directly stumbled into Hua Hua's arms. Yunshi was too tired. Though it was just a trial in a dream, but it still exhausted Yunshi's mind and spirit. He heard a familiar song around his ears. It was so soft and peaceful. Was it a cradle song? Had the battle finished? No, not yet. Yunshi opened his eyes, then saw his childhood sweetheart's smiling face, and heard her soft song. The position was right above himself. "Little Shi, are you awake?" Hua Hua put Yunshi's head on her knees. She softly wiped Yunshi's forehead, gazing at him with her tender eyes. The trial's not finished. Laying on Hua Hua's knees, Yunshi smiled at his childhood sweetheart with confidence. "Sure enough, you are my goddess of victory, Hua Hua." Chapter 57. The three childs at the end of the coastline, standing in front of the great tower with ignited huge flames. Eventually, Yunshi came to the last opponents of this district. They were the noble geniuses from White Lotus Sword Domain or higher sword domains. Child Yun He, Child Xin Yan, and Child San Quan. Three people who had different temperaments. Child Yun He was from Yun He City. He carried the crane-wing twin swords on his back. They were twin swords, just like the swords the second child of Yun He City, who had been defeated by Yun Shi just now, owned. Unlike the two crane swords, the curve of crane-wing twin swords was more smooth. At the side of their blades, there were beautiful wing-like lines. They were true spirit weapons, famous as two swords that were handed down from generation to generation in Yun He City. In the future, it had the possibility to become a lower-grade divine weapon or even a true divine weapon. If viewing from their weapons, Child Yun He was the strongest one among the three people. Snakebone's soft sword was no match for the pair of crane-wing twin swords. Child Xin Yan was from Xianyan City. He was over 2 meters tall, and had long and strong forelimbs. He used a blue-lit two-handed sword. Judging from its scale, his two-handed heavy sword looked a little like the standard two-handed sword Hua Hua used. However, it looked heavier and full of oppressiveness. Undoubtedly, it was a spirit weapon, a weapon belonged to the hero rank. The last person was Child San Quan. He used a special sword, a fan sword. It looked like a fan, but it wasn't a fan. It looked like a sword, but it wasn't a sword neither. This special weapon was made up of 5 sharp blades, and every blade was engraved with weird runes and looked pretty mysterious. Apparently, it wasn't a simple attacking weapon. Associated with his identity of minoring in being swordsman, Daoist priest, and alchemist at the same time, maybe this fan sword also had other secrets. The three people all inherited their nobility bloodlines, because they looked pretty handsome. Child Yun He looked pretty cultured. His appearance fitted the aesthetics of the people of Eastern domains. Child Xin Yan's bloodline was from the Western God's domain. His over 2 meters body height and long, strong forelimbs gave people a strong oppressive feeling. Child San Quan was from a high-level sword domain. He looked unlike a swordsman, but a little feminine. At this moment, faint red lights emitted out from their bodies, which pointed out their identity as the strongest people in this district. They had excellent bloodlines, received best educations, and owned the best equipments. They were the best children of nobility above all the people at the same age, and were generally rated as the top 3 people among all the candidates of the entrance examination of the Sword Palace. Not only the exam of the Sword Palace. Among all third-rank people, they were still on the top of the pyramid of power. People like the 5 Tiger Generals couldn't compare with them at all. Maybe the archer in red, who was so poor that couldn't buy a good equipment, was slightly better than them. However, his combat power was still slightly inferior. There you are. Child Yun He drew out the crane-wing twin swords from his back, looking at Yun Shi as fiercely as a tiger. "We were waiting for you for a long time." Child Xin Yan freed his hands and legs. He looked to be itching for a try. "You've beat down one of us 4 kings. However, he is the weakest one among us. Don't think that we are as weak as him." Child San Quan shook his fingers. When he looked at Yun Shi, he behaved as if he were looking at a corpse. "We're the 3 strongest people. I know. In common sense, you were the strongest third-rank people, geniuses above all geniuses." Yun Shi looked at the 3 people, who were chosen as his ultimate opponents on the way leading to the Great Tower. He also admitted this point. If he didn't have the Stars trial system for the Star Child, he wouldn't even be qualified to compare himself with these 3 people. They were high and mighty, and didn't even glance at mortals. Only the hero rank was their goal. From their births, They had the best cultivation conditions and received the best educations. They had left all ordinary people far away behind them from the beginning. These 3 people were the pride of the noble families of White Lotus Sword Domain. They were the seeds the noble families were going to send to the Sword Palace. After they grew up, they would naturally occupy more discourse power in White Lotus Sword Domain, and help their families shore up their positions. Class wasn't a thing that could be seen through eyes, but it had already been engraved in every corner of society. In their eyes, as a baker, Yunshi didn't even have the right to stand together with them. Say it, how do you want to be killed? Child Yun, he stepped forward. As a super genius educated by his noble family, he had absolute confidence. Every time he used his crane wing twin swords, they must savor the addictive taste of the blood of its enemy. Don't regard those so-called childs as some hothouse flowers. Since he inherited the name Child Yun He of this generation, that meant that he had really stepped in battlefield. You 4 kings are indeed very strong. Yun Shi held up his newbie wooden shield and rushed to Child Yun He without hesitation. Ha ha, you're brave. As a reward, I will send you to hell. Child Yun He laughed and threw the female sword of the crane wing twin swords to the sky. The light female sword drew an elegant arc in the sky, spinning round and round, flying at Yun Shi along a trace that could never be thrown by a human. It looked like a flying crane wing, but also like a roaring dragon. This was the secret sword skill of Yun He City, a super sword skill that had been inherited from generation to generation. That was too fast. Yun Shi forcefully stopped his quicksilver motion halfway. The next moment, a familiar scene happened. With a yell of rage, the hugest person of the 3 people jumped to the sky. As terrible as if a heavy mountain fell from the sky, he raised the 2-handed heavy sword and chopped it toward Yun Shi. Swifter, higher and stronger. Compared to the combined assault of the first Stone Soldier army, these 2 people's joint attack was perfect. No, the most dangerous person still hadn't attacked him yet. Where would he launch an attack? Hee. With a cold laugh, 3 sword blades suddenly appeared under Yun Shi's feet, and woven into a metallic sword net in an instant. Was it some kind of Daoist art, or some kind of occult art of alchemy? Yun Shi didn't even find what the method Child San Quan attacked him was, as he lost his biggest advantage, the flexibility his quicksilver motion brought to him. If Yun Shi didn't kiss Hua Hua, he'd already be dead now. He first made a backflip, then threw out the wooden shield from his hand. He leaned to one side and jumped away. Boom. As if it was a meteorite falling down to the ground, a blue-lit heavy sword heavily hit on the position where Yun Shi was standing at, and made a few meters wide crack on the ground. It was hard to believe that it was a damage that a mortal caused. Comparing to the high-level stone soldier of the first Stone Soldier army, perhaps the leap attack Child TianXiang used was 10 times stronger than it. No, they're not done yet. Swish. The fatal sound of a sword slicing through the air came at him. That was the sound of the crane wing twin swords. Chapter 58, Dancing Crane Swords, Flying. After releasing the twin swords, Child Yun He laughed loudly and smugly. The flying crane swords crossed each other, blocking all the routes Yun Shi may escape his attack. Just like what Hua Hua told him. Gazing at the twin swords locking his body, Yun Shi's heart became quiet conversely. His mind had integrated into the nature. Even as he was in a most hostile environment, he didn't panic. This was a realm that many hero-ranked people couldn't reach. Little Shi, these 3 are wastes, but wastes are still different. Among the 3 people, the most threatening person for you isn't the strongest one, but the one who has the best weapon. So, in order to kill them all, you have to break their most powerful advantage first. After fighting with the 3 childs, Yun Shi quickly understood that Hua Hua was right. Child TianXiang had the strongest strength and attack power. His attacks were bold, a little like the 5 Tiger Generals, and should be practiced on battlefields. Child San Quan knew the most flexible tactics and most sinister attacking methods. His power obviously was the strongest among the 3 people. However, Child Yun He was the strongest person. Because he had the crane wing twin swords. After being used by the best geniuses of Yun He City from generation to generation, The pair of famous swords had had special inside foundations and spirit chi. Well, I think I have to use that. After crossing the newbie iron sword in front of himself, Yunshi blocked the crossing attack of the Crane Wing twin swords from the front. Ding! The Crane Wing twin swords skillfully parried the newbie iron sword and cut through Yunshi's body. Right now, Yunshi used the secret skill which appeared in his mind after kissing Hua Hua. Before the twin swords started stirring in Yunshi's body, it was stopped by a gust of colossal power of essence and blood. Instant refining. Bloodstain secret skill. Instantly, 10% of his blood was drawn out from his body and poured into the Crane Wing twin swords. This was a power that mortals could have, but it was a secret skill that could only be used by hero ranks. It was a taboo skill. Yunshi didn't know where and how Hua Hua learned it, but the self-damaging secret skill was the main reason he made the following tactic. Catching the Crane Wing twin swords was the most important step of the tactic. What? Child Yun shivered, then unbelievably found that Crane Wing twin swords lost contact with his blood and soul in an instant. It would be about 30 seconds. The secret skill he learned from Hua Hua's seed was a taboo skill. It used his blood as sacrifice to obtain the right to control a powerful weapon temporarily. It seemed that this secret skill was invented for robbing an enemy's mighty weapon in the shortest time after losing the weapon on the battlefield. To a low-level weapon, he could obtain right of use by using the bloodstain secret skill once. However, Yunshi was trying to control a hero-ranked spirit weapon as a second-rank mortal. Even if he paid with 10% of his blood, he only obtained its right of use for 30 seconds. However, that was enough. Now, I will show you the true power of Hua Hua's seed. Crane Wing twin swords, Twinfly. Yunshi had never practiced the secret sword skill of Yunhe City, but after controlling the Crane Wing twin swords, Yunshi naturally understood how to use the pair of spirit weapons. No. Hurry back. No one could understand how terrible the Crane Wing twin swords were more than Child Yunhe. It was a lethal weapon above all mortal ranked weapons. Don't panic. Child TianXiang held his blue sword with two hands, then centered on himself, using the terrible skill Bladestorm. Fool. The Crane Wing twin swords can fly. Child Yunhe shouted as he quickly ran away. Kai. The twin swords looked like two flying cranes, but also like two flying dragons. Under Yunshi's control, they cut through Child TianXiang's body from up to down. From his skull to his spine, from his censored body part to his throat, before Child TianXiang played any of his strengths, he had been killed by the swords. Damn it! Why didn't you tell me your spirit weapon already had a spirit? After seeing the true power of Crane Wing twin swords, Child TianXiang couldn't keep calm but changed colors. No, even I can't make it so powerful. Child Yun he was also puzzled. As a pair of spirit weapons made by the successor of the legendary craftsman Ouyez, Crane Wing twin swords had a hidden property. Its power depended on its user's sword talent. That kid could use such a terrible killing attack using the Crane Wing twin swords. Did that meant that the kid's sword talent was higher than his? How was it possible? His sword talent was acknowledged as the number one within in 1,000 miles radius. If it was talking about sword talent, even Child TianXiang was a little inferior to him. Crane Wing, Dance of Chaos. Yunshi also didn't expect that Hua Hua's sword talent could combine with the Crane Wing twin swords so perfectly. He could even hear the satisfied quivering sound of the flying twin swords. After being forged by the successor of Ouyez, Crane Wing twin swords had never met such a super sword genius like Yunshi. At first, he could only control them for 30 seconds. After finding Yunshi's super sword talent, Crane Wing twin swords initiatively extended the use time. If a spirit weapon wanted to become a divine weapon, it needed not only time, but also had to have a legendary master. Swish, swish, swish. At first, it was just a mortal rank crossing attack, but Crane Wing twin swords played over its usual performance, making it like hero rank chasing attacks. In order to please its new master, Yunshi, Crane Wing twin swords played over its usual performance. It chopped and minced Child Yunhe, its former master, and Child TianXiang, who didn't even have the chance to show his abilities. After Crane Wing twin swords flew back to Yunshi's hands and acted as if it was a girl who walked off the stage, Yunshi opened his mouth widely and realized that he had walked through the third district leading to the ultimate great tower. 3 green souls flew out from their bodies and reluctantly flew into Yunshi's body. They were absorbed by Yunshi together with the souls of the other high-level stone soldiers and the soul of the unknown archer in red. Well, they're equal to 10 green hippos worth of souls. After feeling the power of the souls in his body, Yunshi grinned from ear to ear. 3 childs, what 3 wonderful gifts you are. In fact, you were the weakest 3 people of the 4 kings, right? The archer in red was more powerful than you. His power was pure and strong and he didn't rely on any equipments. If the crane-wing twin swords belonged to the archer in red, Yunshi didn't think he could pull through the third district. Chapter 59. The Tower of Song. Yunshi closed his eyes and held crane-wing twin swords, which just flew back to his hands. On his chest, the wound cut through by the swords started to heal. Due to the extraordinary performance of the crane-wing twin swords, his desperate tactic achieved complete success. Including Child Yunhe, Child Xinyan, and Child San Quan, even Yunshi himself didn't expect that the pair of crane-wing twin swords would display such terrible strength in his hands. Hiss. Ha. By using the breathing method he learned from Hua Hua, Yunshi recovered his health and observed the secret of crane-wing twin swords at the same time. The twin swords were the best weapons Yunshi had ever obtained. By holding them in his hands, he could feel the difference between it and mortal weapons. It was so light. That was the first impression Yunshi had holding them. Why could the twin swords fly in the air so nimbly? It was all due to its property of being as light as nothing. As long as he could control them, he could easily use all sorts of inconceivable flying sword skills. Between the female sword and the male sword, there were special attractive and repulsive forces. Plus the exquisite wing patterns on the blade, the twin swords have incredible maneuverability in air combat. The most important thing was that when Yunshi held the twin swords in his hands, he could feel the palpitation of the twin swords from the bottom of his heart. He even vaguely felt that it was linking with his bloodline. Spirit weapon. They were a pair of top-quality spirit weapons. Holding the twin swords in his hands, Yunshi loved them so much that he almost couldn't bear to part with them. Little she, this pair of swords are only suitable for the people below the hero rank. It's not that precious. Seeing that Yunshi's eyes were so eager when he looked at crane-wing twin swords, Hua Hua felt a little jealous. Naturally, he knew the twin swords were unusual. They could even be called prospective divine weapon. She didn't know why, but it seemed that the twin swords were very suitable for Yunshi. Bloodstained secret skill couldn't make the twin swords act like that. Let me have a look. Hua Hua took the crane-wing twin swords from Yunshi's hands. She gazed at it, then frowned. Something was wrong. The twin swords were rejecting her. They were good swords. However, she didn't know why, but they disliked her. If she used bloodstained secret skill to force it to obey her, it'd probably choose to self-damage to avoid it. Yunshi could use it. That waste could barely use it too, but not her. Why? Did the twin swords discriminate against women? It's a pity that I can only use you in the trial. After taking the twin swords back, Yunshi said and shrugged his shoulders. There did exist such a wonderful, occasional encounter in the world. He had never seen the crane-wing twin swords before, but after obtaining it, he immediately found that it was as if it was tailor-made for him. It was light like nothing, very suitable for Yunshi since he was practicing the flying swallow sword. In addition to its nimble attack style and its deadliness that was beyond the mortal rank, it and Yunshi were like a match made in heaven. Ding! The crane-wing twin swords made an euphonious sword tremolo. It made Yunshi's heart quiver for an instant, looking like he vaguely felt something. Unfortunately, Yunshi was still at mortal rank. He didn't know what did this mean. Okay, let's put the twin swords aside and go to the ultimate great tower. Because she was prohibited to help Yunshi in the third district, Hua Hua was pretty angry by now. She was already tired of killing a group of wastes dozens of times. Now, it was her showtime. No matter who you were, as long as you dared to get in Yunshi's way, I will sweep you all away. Well, I have a foreboding, the ultimate trial won't be that easy. Yunshi raised his head, looking at the giant great tower. If the thing evolved as his though, perhaps the ultimate trial would be extremely difficult. The twin witches. Would the enemy be White Lotus or Red Lotus? Suddenly, countless bells resounded on the empty coastline. Along with the light, a pure song swept the land. The bloody first district. The second district of the erupting volcano. The brutal third district. In all the districts, all blood and dust were purified by the song. A gust of strong power swept the entire coastline. What a terrible power! For the first time, Hua changed her expression. This was the first time that Yunxi saw such a serious expression on his childhood sweetheart's face. Even when she fought against the hero-rank male fiery dragon, she still looked very casual and relaxed. Since their childhood, Yunxi had never seen such a solemn look on Hua's face. Tonight, no one sleeps. My prince, come to meet me. The following curses will come true one by one. The world won't accept you, and you will be swallowed by the darkness. Whether you decide to come or escape, you will be cursed. It will chase you and kill you. Incarnadined the sky, blacked the earth. Blood has nourished the monster, and the nightmare has opened its eyes. Only the tower, shining as usual. Come on. Go to the top of the tower and meet your princess. Only the person who broke the prisoner's cage can reach the place of the princess. With the familiar sound of singing, the little coastline world started to change its color to what the girl sang. The sky was incarnadined by blood. The earth was swallowed by the darkness. The first district, the second district, and the third district were swallowed and covered by the mists of darkness one by one. Dimly, he saw large quantities of monsters running out from the mists. Unlike the opponents transformed from the childs, the 5 tiger generals and all sorts of strange beasts, those stuffs walking out from the darkness were covered in thick air of death. They looked like ashes that had been deprived by all warmth. Go. Yunxi grasped Hua's little hands, who hadn't yet understood what happened, rushing together into the only light and hope of the world, the great tower. The last trial was coming. He had no way to go unless he went to the top of the tower and saved the imprisoned princess. Yunxi didn't know what would happen if he lost the trial, but his instinct told him that those black stuffs weren't good. They weren't some gifts that the stars prepared for him. The trial wasn't a game. Yunxi knew that better than anyone. The nightmare was coming. Now, he and Hua needed to find the light, the last hope of the world. My princess, I'm coming to save you. Chapter 60, Princess and Guardian. My prince. Princess. After being pulled and entering the great tower with Yunxi and hearing the melodious singing echoing around the sky and earth, Hua looked at Yunxi with suspicion. She felt that something in the dream was wrong. If this was a dream, how could she feel the touch of Yunxi's hand, their heartbeats as they ran together, and her irrepressible euphoria? They were all too real. I wander in the darkness, once dreamed the whisper that no one could hear, now, I see the road, the fate, at least, at this moment, let me open myself to you. The unreachable wish, the trampled wing. Lowering my head in the darkness, and waiting for your coming. The shadow of tears, the shadow of the moon. They overflow my palms. My lips are trembling in the darkness. Come to find me, come to look at me. Treat me as the world's best princess, my prince. Even I'm covered in bumps and bruises, I don't regret to falling in love with you. As long as I can stay with you, enjoying the same time with you, darkness and sadness will warm up. The whirling mist let me forge the ring of star and moon for you, in order to witness our forever love. Our love will turn into light, shining the darkness and going to immortal. The sad, soft, hot, yearning sound of singing resounded in the old great tower, winding around Yunxi's body. That was confession and confidence. It was the last light and the only hope in the world that would be covered by darkness. Here was the Tower of Fire, the last redemption of the world. Ah, who is she? How dare she sing such a shameless song? Little she, tell me, it's not a song about you, right? Hua was trying to overcome her desire to draw out the two-handed sword from her back while displaying a murderous look on her face. His childhood sweetheart's radar of jealousy was starting to scan the potential rival from all directions. This is my first time coming here. Yunshi wasn't lying, but he didn't tell her the truth either. Who was the princess he needed to save? What was the relationship between the princess and the world which was going to be swallowed by darkness? Too many questions appeared in Yunshi's heart. This was his first time taking the formal trial. Compared to the formal trial, the trial in the dark forest was like a playing house game. After running and running, there wasn't any monster in the empty great tower. There was only a spiral staircase leading to the top of the tower, and the more and more terrible atmosphere as he ran upwards. Be careful, little she. There are probably very strong enemies. Hua had found this at the first moment she stepped in the great tower. She could feel a very terrible atmosphere at the top of the great tower. There was a burning flame. There was a shining light. That wasn't an opponent the male fiery dragon could be comparable to. I know. My opponents are very strong. However, we have no choice. To Hua, this was just a dream. It wouldn't be hurt even she died. However, as the tested person, there was no way back for Yunshi. Even at the top of the tower, that was as dangerous as Dragon's Nest or a tiger's cave, he had to go to there to finish the ultimate goal of the trial, save the princess. If so, I will fight side by side with you. We will win, no matter who the enemy is. Hua's eyes looked unprecedentedly serious. Comparing to the time she casually killed the male fiery dragon, now, Hua's battle will was fully on. Boom. The two-handed sword broke the door leading to the top of the tower. Yunshi and Hua rushed together into the last battlefield. On a huge wooden cross, the Holy Virgin White Lotus was tied in the center of the cross by black chains. The raging fire was burning her, but there was no signs of scorching on her small naked feet. My prince, though her two hands were hung on the cross and her whole body was tied by black chains, White Lotus's pale eyes still gazed at Yunshi with happiness. Prince. Hua glanced at Yunshi with a weird look, then tightly stared at White Lotus. Why? Why this girl looks so familiar? I remember as if in the last dream. Boom. Before Hua remembered anything, the fire licked White Lotus's feet and raised to the sky. The enormous power broke the tower top, and then, a 3 meters tall monster, who was surrounded by flames, appeared in front of Yunshi's eyes. It wore a crimson armor skirt, held a scarlet flame sword with spiral grooves, and looked like a translucent woman. Even if it just stood still, it had almost made Yunshi choke. On her morning glow-like cloak, large amounts of fire powders were burning and dancing along with her breathing. Jump, little she. Hua's words warned Yunshi in time. Subconsciously, Yunshi jumped up. Swish. Countless fire powders came crashing through below Yunshi's feet. If Yunshi hesitated just now, he'd have died. She wasn't like any enemy Yunshi met before. If he didn't hear Hua's warning, perhaps he'd have been killed at the first instant. In the face of 10 times power, any tactics, strategies, or skills were useless. Moreover, the power of the red monster was far more than 10 times Yunshi's power. Sister. No. White Lotus anxiously gazed at the huge figure, which was wrapped by flames and was temporarily separated from her. Get out of the way. Red Lotus snappily stared at Yunshi, raising her Red Lotus holy sword again. She didn't know why she had this inexplicable dream again. Besides, she had to separate from her sister White Lotus temporarily, becoming her sister's flame guardian spirit. It seemed that this form conformed to some rule of the world and she felt it was very easy to handle. However, due to this, she had to defeat any people who dared to get close to the princess. She didn't need anyone to tell her to do it, because it was an elder sister's natural duty to kill any bad men who dared to get close to her little sister, right? You want to kill my little she? Apparently, Hua didn't realize who the flame guardian spirit was, but at the very moment she saw the spirit attack Yunshi, she lost her temper. This time, she wouldn't allow Yunshi to fight against the guardian spirit, because though she didn't know who the flame guardian spirit was, but even 10 male fiery dragons weren't her opponent. Even if they were at the same hero rank, there was still a large gap among different individuals. This spirit was a troublesome one. It seems she couldn't keep hiding her true power. Fortunately, this was just a dream. She didn't need to worry about how to deal with it if she damaged the environment too much. I will show you the true power of the sky-flying bloodline. As blood dropped down from her fingers, Hua Hua's eyes changed. I am sorry for the delays this week, just out back from the hospital about 2 days ago, been lying in there for a week. Anyways, chapters like usual, please enjoy. Please check it out our Patreon page. Q1. Chapter 61. Tragic Asura. The booming sounds of metal colliding resounded at the top of the exploded Great Tower. Yunxi's childhood sweetheart and the Red Lotus Holy Virgin of the Twin Witches were starting a fighting that was far beyond Yunxi's understanding. They were both super geniuses. One of them was Yunxi's childhood sweetheart, who he never understood thoroughly, and was a super sword girl that could use the God's Sword skill Sky Flying Sword. The other was Red Lotus, who succeeded the position of the Witch of White Lotus Sword Domain and was so famous that you could even hear her name in Western God's Domain. In order to protect Yunxi. In order to protect White Lotus. Enemy, die. Invader, die. What? Was this a fighting I could take sides in? Watching the fighting between Hua Hua and Red Lotus, Yunxi felt he was totally useless when faced with a fight at this level. Prince, come here. Taking the opportunity that Hua Hua and her sister fought so fiercely that they couldn't distract themselves from the fighting, White Lotus stealthily waved her hands to Yunxi. Your Highness Holy Virgin, what are you doing? After blocking the shockwave caused by the fighting between the two monsters, Yunxi tried his best to go toward the tied White Lotus Holy Virgin. I did nothing. Some power of the world influenced my sister. She became that violent monster. She also wanted to be a quiet sleeping beauty waiting for her prince's kiss. However, it seemed that some rules of the world chained her on the wooden cross from the moment she entered the world, and her sister became the eternal flame spirit guarding her. The only thing she could do was to sing from the top of the single great tower to call her prince to save her. I see. How can I save you? After knowing the origin and development, Yunxi was having cold sweat. If he didn't go perform the side quest and obtained Hua Hua's help and only used his own power, even if he passed through the 3rd district due to luck, he would be killed by Red Lotus at the very instant he faced the ultimate challenge. What an extremely difficult formal trial. The star's special consideration made Yunxi want to cry. You can. White Lotus gazed at Yunxi with tenderness and love. Even if Hua Hua wasn't here, she could still help Yunxi. The most difficult part of the trial was how to enter the Great Tower. I'm waiting for you, my prince. Do you remember the love token you gave me? This world has its own rules. You need to do one thing to suppress my sister and save me. As hearing White Lotus's plan, Yunxi couldn't stop beads of sweat dripping from his forehead and back. If he did that, Hua Hua would kill him. However, if he didn't do it, the world would be destroyed. Oh, he didn't want to make mistakes. It was the world forcing him. Hua Hua lightly leapt up. In her hands, the two-handed heavy sword, which could even be used as siege weapon, burst out blue light. Temporarily, Hua Hua overcame the gravity, standing upside down in the sky. At that moment, time also temporarily stopped. Even the burning fire powders which surrounded Red Lotus also paused in the sky by the will and spirit of Hua Hua's sword. Skyfly, crossing slash. The 3 meters tall guardian spirit's body was covered with wounds and exposed Red Lotus's true body inside it. Her 2 hands raised her Red Lotus holy sword, as the blazing cloak waved on her back by the wind. Hot sun, burning the sky. A column of scorching fire raised to the sky. This was a fighting between extraordinary power and extraordinary power, a bloody battle between 2 hero-rank strong people. The tremendous crossed sword light and the huge column of fire exploded together. They almost destroyed half of the giant Great Tower. Great. Hua Hua was very excited. She had waited too long to meet such a spicy battle with an opponent at the same level with her. You. Wait, bastard, what are you doing? At first, Red Lotus was absorbed in staring at Hua Hua, the most threatening enemy. However, when she took a chance to glance at her sister, her anger exploded. Boom. Countless flames burst out. Regardless of having turned her back to Hua Hua, Red Lotus frantically rushed to the cross. Little she. Hua Hua didn't take this opportunity to attack Red Lotus, because she was even angrier than Red Lotus. Her little she, her childhood sweetheart, was holding the poor, lovely girl's hands. He lowered his head and gave the girl a soft, sweet kiss on her hand. Arurag. White Lotus. Nu. Little she. Red Lotus and Hua Hua went mad together. I give you my love. In that case, I can shine the world. White Lotus was indulging in Yunshi's kiss. Finally, she tried to be the first. The time between two lovers was so sweet. I wanted all your first experiences. I wanted to become the only one in your heart. For you, I willed to become the eternal flame of the world, to deprive all darkness. You were the light of my life. You were the forever I hoped. You were the lover I waited. Give it to me, my prince. White Lotus reached out her small hands and put the ring of star and moon she forged in Yunshi's hands. Yunshi could feel killing intent. Two very strong killing intents. One was from his powerful childhood sweetheart, the unbeatable sword girl, who could kill the male fiery dragon like she was killing a poor dog. Another was from White Lotus's elder sister, Red Lotus, one of the twin witches, who could turn into a burning guardian spirit. None of them was an opponent that he could be a good match for. More exactly, he could only wait to be killed by them. What should he do to defuse the crisis? At this time, Yunshi vaguely understood how his past life died. Fortunately, he had a backup this time. The girl was also the most important person of the world. Though he didn't know why she wanted him to give her the ring, which looked totally unlike the Mikolex he presented her before, however, since he didn't have more information, this was his only choice. You bastard. Don't touch my White Lotus. Red Lotus got crazy. She turned into the red-hot guardian spirit, rushing towards Yunshi. She really wanted to kill him. Little she, explain this. Hua Hua leapt to the sky again. The two-handed heavy sword was dyed bright red. She was angry. This was the first time that Yunshi saw Hua Hua so angry. Was I playing with fire? Yunshi tried to weep, but failed to shed a tear. He could only look at the girl with the ring of star and moon in his arms. Don't worry. Trust me. Trust me. Trust the girl who was always waiting for you. After putting the ring of star and moon on her head, White Lotus looked pretty happy. Again, the song resounded in the world, which was going to be swallowed by the darkness. I wander in the darkness, once dreamed the whisper that no one could hear, the unreachable wish and the trampled wing. Lowering my head in the darkness, and waiting for your coming. The whirling mist let me forge the ring of star and moon for you, in order to witness our forever love. Our love will turn into light, shining the darkness and going to immortal. I am sorry for the delays this week, just out back from the hospital about 2 days ago, been lying in there for a week. Anyways, chapters like usual, please enjoy. Please check it out our Patreon page. Q1. Chapter 62, The Primal Fire Inside the Stainless White Radiance. White Lotus guided Yunshi's hands to put the ring of star and moon on her head, declaring to the world their brave oath. Today, I hold his hands and tell all the people in the world. From this day forward, I'm going to a couple with him. For rich or for poor. For better or for worse. Like the stars shining in the infinite night sky. Our hearts linked together, never to be separated. We wish for love, we want to stay together. If our tenderness can suffuse the world, that would be fantastic. No, not only so. For you, I'm willing to become the eternal flame to bring light to the world. That was the girl's decision. For the sake of her lover, she volunteered for that. The world was filled with darkness and despair. Countless dead souls were wandering in the nightmare. They couldn't rest. They couldn't sleep. Therefore, she would become the light that would light up the world, to be the initial fire. Boom between earth and sky, a huge white lotus bloomed. Then a layer of crimson fire surrounded White Lotus. White Lotus and Red Lotus combined together in such a weird way. At the last sanctuary of the world, they lit the column of fire, shining the sky and earth. The red sky and black earth ushered light again. One after another, bonfires appeared in all the corners of the dark world. The world was lighting up. Even the fire couldn't change the true nature of the dark world, it just brought a slender hope. She could barely see the puzzled souls going towards those bonfires from the void. Then they transformed into human figures, gazing at their own two hands in confusion. They didn't have memories of their pasts, but also represented the hope of the world. They were ashes birthed from fire, wandering souls corrupted by the dark world. The Tower of Fire lit up by White Lotus and Red Lotus supported them so that they could be born in the bonfire. The destiny of the world had changed. The world, which was supposed to fall in perpetual darkness, would sing a song of blood and fire again. After losing all their memories and returning to the world from the bonfire, those undead had to explore the world and fight against the terrible monsters born from the dark side. The flame kept burning. The fighting would never end. What's this? Unlike the newbie trial, Shi clearly felt the reality of the world. If the stone soldiers, the green hippo and the male fiery dragon were opponents the stars summoned from the nearby regions around the small town, then the dark wave which swept across the world and the undead who were returning to the world from the bonfire were undoubtedly also a part of the world. And White Lotus, as the person who lit the primal fire, was a very special being to the world. So, this is a real world. Shi vaguely remembered that Maya had said that the trial world was a dream world the stars helped him link to. However, the current situation told him that it wasn't just as simple as a dream. The dark and the fire, the bonfire and the undead, and the primal fire lit by the witch. Shi had a feeling that it wasn't the end between the world and himself. It was probably just a beginning. Looking down from the top of the great tower, the place lit by the primal fire, here was just the edge of a vast continent. The dark forest and the great tower were just two infinitely small parts of the world. At a distance, there were majestic mountains and imposing old castles. In the horizon, there was some indiscernible objects that linked the sky and the ground. Little She, White Lotus. As Shi eyed the vast area, the fighting between Hua and Red Lotus started again. His strong childhood sweetheart and the perhaps stronger Red Lotus waved their weapons at the same time, running towards Shi, who was gently hugging White Lotus in his arms. Sorry, sister. He's the only one I won't give up to you. White Lotus made a naughty smile towards the resentful Red Lotus and Hua, then used one of her fingers to draw a seal in the air. One person, one city, one heart, one wall. A rhombic wall suddenly appeared in front of Red Lotus and Hua. That was a god's skill She had once glanced in the seed of the twin witches' void seal. However, at that time, a sword appeared in the void, but this time, it was a wall. Boom. A flame 2 times more violent than before blasted. Swish. Swish. Following that was a big crossing sword attack. Hua's two-handed sword bounced off and cracked. One person, one city, one heart, one wall. When it came to attacks, White Lotus was inferior to her sister. However, if we were talking about defense, then she was undoubtedly the best. The twin witches, one used a sword and another one used seals. One was expert in attack and another one was expert in defense. When they teamed up, they had no weakness. Hence, when Red Lotus found that her sister blocked her attack by using the Wall of Heart, she couldn't believe her eyes. Her gentle, graceful, and innocent sister was resisting her. In other words, herself. No, this couldn't be White Lotus's fault. It was all the bastard prince's fault. This damn dream. This cursed world. Little She, be careful, I'm not going to preserve my strength. After seeing White Lotus hugging Shi, Hua's killing intention rose suddenly and sharply. Burst gauge. Tremendous blood power, far more terrible than the male fiery dragon, burst out from Hua's body. If anyone still claimed that Hua was at 3rd rank now, that person must be blind. Even 1,000 green hippos were nothing when faced with the current Hua. Another skill and power that Shi didn't know. Hua, how many god skills were you still hiding? Don't worry. We're blessed by the world, my prince. Behold, the glory of the stars is shining on us. White Lotus and Shi were acting intimately. They hugged each other, reveling in the fairy-tale-like atmosphere. Oh, the world was so wonderful, and the flame was so warm here. If this moment could last forever, what a wonderful dream it would be. Oh, the stars are coming. Shi raised his head. Looking at the tardy lights of the stars, Yunshi breathed a sigh of relief. Hong. Hua went into her super mode. She broke 3 layers of the wall of heart by one hit and rushed towards Yunshi. The 3-meter-tall flame spirit turned into a flash of red-hot light and also flew at them with anger. At that very moment, the lights of the stars dropped and covered Yunshi. The first formal trial came to an end. I am sorry for the delays this week, just out back from the hospital about 2 days ago, been lying in there for a week. Anyways, chapters like usual, please enjoy. Please check it out our Patreon page. Thank you John Doan for the donation. Queue cleared. Chapter 63, Huge Harvest. After returning to the Palace of Stars, Yunshi lost himself in the warm, sweet taste of White Lotus's lips. At the last moment when the starlight wrapped Yunshi, it looked like White Lotus realized something. She kissed him fiercely and didn't part from him until the last second. After that summer and meeting that big sister, it was the first time that Yunshi was at a loss after being kissed. He was so puzzled. Master, you did well. Before Yun 11 returned to the earth, the cute star fairy Maya kissed him again. In the Palace of Stars, she kept her human form but didn't do anything special that was different from what she did when she was still in her golden, little dog form. She was always so ebullient regardless of where she was and what moment it was. After his face was full of Maya's saliva, Yunshi finally got a free moment to check what he had obtained in the trial. The first were the souls. A great number of souls. Taking the green hippo that Yunshi had encountered before as a basic unit, the souls he obtained were about 16 units, which meant that they were equal to 16 hippos. Most of the souls were from the stone soldiers he had killed in the 3rd district. The next were his fighting spoils. Although he couldn't bring them out of the trial world, but the 3rd rank units Yunshi had killed all offered him weapons. The 5 tiger generals offered him 5 refined long lances, and the 3rd rank stone soldiers on the bridge also offered him a big heap of swords, lances and halberds. However, his toughest enemy, the archer in red, only offered him a refined longbow, which made Yunshi sigh for this strongest archer's poverty. Finally, the most valuable part came. TianXiang offered his dark blue 2-handed heavy sword. Unsurprisingly, it was made by the Thunder Army in the Western God's domain, and was obviously more advanced than the sword Yunshi obtained in the 1st district. TianXiang offered him his strange fan sword. It was made in Satsuki sword domain and called Spirit Bird Fan Sword. It was a high-level spirit weapon which could be used by a priest, swordsman, and alchemist, and if necessary, its 5 fan blades could combine into one and become a Taoist sword. The last of the last, the famous swords which were handed down from age to age by TianXiang's family, the Crane Wing twin swords. They were made the godlike craftsman's successor Ouyz, and had grown into super spirit weapons after thousands of years. The first characteristic of the Crane Wing twin swords, the more talented their owner was, the more power the swords could display. The second characteristic of the Crane Wing twin swords, flying crane wings. When they were forged, they were mixed with some super materials from the Eastern God's domain. They were as light as air and existed side by side. Even if you were a mortal, you could still use it to display some sword skills such as flying sword. The third characteristic of the Crane Wing twin swords, the sword spirits. As time went by, 2 sword spirits had been born inside of the twin swords, and only the swordsman who could master his heart could hear the twin swords' voices and master their power. The extra characteristic of the Crane Wing twin swords, the twin swords could only be used by a man, but not a woman. The current state of the Crane Wing twin swords, a standard godly weapon. It deserved Hua's favor. Its characterizations had made it above the level of all the other weapons. It was the first godly weapon she had ever seen. The most valuable part was that the godly spirit weapon could even be used by mortals. If it wasn't because Child he couldn't display the power of the twin swords fully and was too arrogant, she wouldn't even have gotten through the 3rd district. Other than these weapons, the 3rd district also offered she dozens of green crystal fragments, which could be used to strengthen his weapons. However, what disappointed she was that these green crystal fragments couldn't be used to strengthen the Crane Wing twin swords. It seemed that they needed more advanced gem fragments. After obtaining the Crane Wing twin swords, Yunshi didn't think that he needed any other low-level weapons, and the equipment he obtained this time were all weapons. Therefore, it seemed that he didn't need to use these green crystal fragments temporarily. The last reward was to choose one of the seeds that the stars offered, which was what Yunshi was eager for. Unlike the weapons, these seeds could be used to strengthen Yunshi himself and provide a high growth rate. Huahua's seed, which Yunshi had obtained in the newbie trial, had made his combat power have a great change within a few days. This time, there were 3 seeds waiting for him to pick from. Except for Huahua's seed, they were the strongest 3 seeds Yunshi had ever seen. The first seed was from Child San Quan. Child San Quan's seed could let him master Taoist skills, alchemy, 5-animal sword skill, and a skill called quick thinking, which allowed him to think 3 times faster than ordinary people. It was quite a good seed. Compared to the green hippo's seed, which could only offer him strong power, this seed was more comprehensive, and the skill quick thinking was incredibly strong. If you could think 3 times faster than ordinary people, it was the equivalent of giving you 3 times the usual study time. No wonder that Child San Quan could learn the knowledge of a priest, chemist, and swordsman at the same time. The difficulty to merge the seed, normal. The affinity of the seed, normal. The predicted merging time, 3 months. It was quite a mediocre seed and could be regarded as a typical representative of third-rank elites. If Yunshi was in a situation that needed power immediately, it could be a good choice. The second seed was from the mysterious archer in red. The archer's seed was named the Eidolon Archer's Seed. It specialized in act alone and snipe. It could let its owner master spiral arrow skill, double arrow skill, seeker arrow skill, and shocking arrow skill. Special ability 1, Eagle Eye, which allowed the user to snipe his enemies from 4 miles away by using a tailored longbow. Special ability 2, Heart Eye, which was learned from practice and actual combat, and could let the user master the current situation. Even if there was only 1% possibility that could turn the tide in a battle, this ability could let its user grasp that opportunity. Special ability 3, Not Awakened. It was an extremely strong and mysterious ability and could be provoked in some special situation. Bollardline Godly Weapon, Not Awakened. It is supposed to be a bow, but still unknown. The difficulty to merge the seed, high. The affinity of the seed, excellent. The predicted merging time, 3 years. Whoa! This is terrible. At first, Yunshi thought that Child San Quan's seed was already very great, but if he compared it with this seed, it was just a waste. This was also the first time that Yunshi saw 2, in the description of seeds, except for Huahua's seed. If referring to Huahua's power when she fought with Red Lotus in the ultimate tall tower, this archer in red had great potential. However, why did he have excellent affinity with an archery career? It was the first time that he had seen this seed, but the stars told him that he had excellent affinity with it. Finally, Yunshi moved his eyes to the last seed, which had made his heart palpitate with excitement. This wasn't the first time that Yunshi had seen this seed. However, compared to the last time he had seen it, the description of the seed contained more information this time. It was the seed of the strongest genius in the entire White Lotus sword domain, the Twin Witches. White Lotus and Red Lotus's seed. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.